This is the Lit Podcast with me, Dr. Derek Su, where we explore purpose, potential, and the human condition, and hopefully uncover some new ways of being and doing in the process. Jump in and join me for a deep dive with my special guests each and every episode for some revelatory, stimulating, and sometimes scintillating conversation. All right, it's time to get lit. Let's do this. Welcome to the third installment of the Lit Podcast. Today, I have an amazing treat with my special guest, Jason Chan. I first met Jason nearly 20 years ago in Sydney, and you'll hear all about our chance meeting in the podcast. But first, let me tell you a little more about him and why you'll want to stick around for this. Jason is a trained pianist, dancer, doctor, and actor, and got his first taste of real-world entertainment success straight out of acting school when he was cast as a co-host for Playhouse Disney. Without wasting any time, he then landed a role that has since garnered him cult status as the Green Power Ranger. Shortly after, he moved to Singapore, acted for film, theatre and TV, as well as hosting segments for the China Olympics in 2008 for Singapore's MediaCorp Channel 5. In 2012, he started his own production company, Banana Mana Films, with his friend and business partner, Christian Lee. They have since trailblazed a path in the new media, producing their own content, winning numerous awards in the streaming space, starting with What Do Men Want on Toggle, which was simultaneously broadcast on TV, followed up by a web series, Perfect Girl, which eventually got picked up by the airlines, Viki, and the holy grail of modern media, Netflix. Jason then went on to co-produce their first independently financed feature film, Jamami Tofu, which won the Audience Choice Award for Best Feature Film at the Hawaii International Film Festival, and currently has a not-to-be-scoffed-at 8.4 rating on IMDb. Jamami Tofu also has a distinct achievement of being the longest-running film screened in Singapore. Most recently, he has co-founded a new company with Christian, Cinewav, to allow anyone to experience the full magic of cinema with just a projector, laptop, and mobile phone, effectively giving filmmakers the ability of getting their film seen in the way they wanted, on the big screen with perfect audio anywhere that even a fully decked out cinema cannot match. It's groundbreaking, game-changing stuff. On today's podcast, we'll be exploring some of the surprising twists and turns of his amazing journey so far, uncover the mindset and thinking behind his success, as well as discover some of the setbacks and struggles he's encountered along the way. We learn about his creative process and why it's a love-hate relationship, the value he gleaned from the many years working as a doctor, the pivotal question that changed the trajectory of his production company from client-facing to producing their own award-winning content for web, TV, and film, how a little $1,000 budget production got sold to Netflix, and how you can partner with him on his latest project. I am truly excited to share with you this inspiring and revealing conversation with Jason. There really is just so much good stuff here. So with that, let's not delay any further. Please enjoy this deep dive with Jason Chan. Welcome, Jason. So good to have you on the podcast.
Very nice to be here. Thanks, Derek.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. I think I remember contacting you probably about a year ago. And I know that we had to reschedule as well about a month ago because I had some urgent matters to take care of. And so thank you for being so flexible and making time for this.
No worries. I mean, we did have a pandemic, in between all of this. So totally understandable.
Yes. Yeah. Now, I would like to describe you as a polymath, a powerhouse polymath. I don't know whether you've heard of that term, but it's also a new term that I've just come across. Mm-hmm. It basically describes someone who does a lot of different things and does them at a pretty competent level. And I think of you that way because you have done so much in your life. When I first met you, you were a doctor working part-time and studying acting. I don't know whether you remember when we actually first met.
I can't remember the moment, but I think you came to one of our shows at NIDA. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. It was a NIDA showcase, and there's a funny story behind that actually, because I had only just found out about this showcase like maybe a couple of days before it was happening, and for some reason I felt I needed to be there, and I did the most irresponsible thing that any actor or performer can do, is that reneged on a prior commitment to do a job.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't just any job. I was like a body double on The Matrix. So I was working with the main cast. And I just called up the agent and I said, look, I just found out about this NIDA thing. I feel like I need to go. I'm so sorry. So that's pretty unforgivable. And needless to say, I don't think I got any more work after that.
Oh my gosh. That's and for what? Just to become friends with me? That's all you got out of it.
Well, I'd have to say that was the primary benefit. I had no idea. I didn't even know who you were at that time, actually, of course, because all I remember was I came along to that showcase, and I saw you doing that scene from
Jerry Maguire.
What was that movie? Jerry Maguire, yeah. And then we went out and ate afterwards.
Yeah, that was cool. It was nice. It was a funny time because quite stressful at the time, because we were doing that showcase to leave NIDA, of course, and very nerve-wracking time for all of us. So it was great to meet a new friend and chat about stuff. What the
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, that was after you've done 3 years of acting, like just focusing on acting, right? And all the agents apparently around Sydney were going to be there to get work. Did you actually get any kind of work from that showcase, or did that lead to anything?
The showcase is essentially for us to audition to get out of NIDA to get an agent. Essentially, I think in Sydney at the time, it's really hard to get work generally in the acting business unless you have an agent, because there are all these middlemen that are part of the whole system of getting work. And so essentially the whole purpose of showcase was to get yourself a good agent. And so the nerve-wracking part was a couple of weeks after showcase, when all the agents came to our school and would call us in one by one. Or actually, no, the agents didn't come to our school, sorry, I remember it wrongly. Our school had a session where we'd all wait outside, just like the way we were waiting outside in our first audition to get into NIDA, but this time we were waiting for the results of that showcase. And then we'd go into the head of our course, we'd meet with them, and they would list off who wanted to meet with you. And that's just a meeting. It's not like they're going to pick you up, but generally who wants to meet and chat to you first. And of course, everyone was hoping that you'd get the big agent, whoever the big agent was at the time, and it was always nerve-wracking, because the scariest thing is to then spend 3 years of your time at NIDA and then come out and not get an agent, which basically means you're very unlikely to get work. Not always the case, because you can get work other ways, or you can develop your portfolio other ways and get noticed other ways, of course, which many people do. But some people come out of that showcase after 3 years and not get an agent, and that's pretty scary.
Well, yeah, and of course the industry back then was very, very different from the landscape now. It was very top heavy. In terms of the control was very top heavy, whereas now we have a lot more power as individuals.
Yes, that's absolutely true, which is great, actually. It's quite inspiring, really, where it's come. Even then, I think I had the idea that I didn't like the fact that it was very top-heavy. It was very a star-based system, very much run by Hollywood. And Australia pretty much followed that model. So, unless you were the type of material that might become a star, or some agents and companies and producers would want to promote as a star, then you were very unlikely to get many roles. And we were told that throughout NIDA. Pretty much we knew who was going to become a star, and it was
Really?
very predictable.
You kind of like knew in your class who was going to.
Well, they pretty much told us it's blonde. Anyone who's blonde
Okay.
and fits that sort of stereotype of you've got to be good looking enough, kind of that like kind of a model, blonde, blue eyes, perfect. And they would I saw in NIDA that they would generally push those agendas too. They would push those people into into the spotlight so that they would get the right agents. And sure enough, the agents just pick those people. The big agents would pick those people who were the most, I guess you'd call them the most marketable. But I don't blame them. I
Yeah.
mean, they had a business to keep running, and the business was all about who are the marketable people, who are going to be your lead roles, and it was pretty much white Caucasians that would be it. So anyone else who was kind of a minority or ethnic in any way, you know, if your skin color just wasn't right, then you are unlikely to get a lot of interesting work.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I remember back then it was very, very rare to see any Asians on TV or in productions or anything like that. It was just like just an occasional here and there.
Yeah.
So how did you find it, knowing that going into it or being kind of fed this idea? How did you feel about it coming out of that, and what was your feeling in terms of your prospects of being able to get work?
Um, I was torn because I remember the head of the school, John Clark, once came up to me and pulled me aside and he said, before the Agents Day, he said, you know, you should go to China. That's all. That's where all the work is for you. You should go to China and act there. And I remember being taken aback by that a lot because I felt almost that that was a racist statement, you know, that I, because of my skin color, have to leave the country that I grew up in and go somewhere else just so that I could get work. I obviously didn't think that was fair and that I was somehow typecast. But the reality of it was that he was right. He was totally right. And I should have listened to him, you know, at the time and maybe learnt Mandarin or, you know, went to China and started early on because I was then going to experience what he had predicted, which was that there's not much work going to be around for you and your skin color. You should go where there is work. And in the end, I guess that's why I moved out to Singapore, just because there was work. And it took a little while for me to understand that. And having said that, you know, I was lucky in that I was cast, and I got jobs straight out of NIDA. In fact, I was the first one to get work out of my class. In fact, before I left, I was cast in a play at Belvoir Street, and I was in that play before we even graduated that year. That was a little bit of tension.
How did that happen? How did
Well,
you manage to
there
get
was
the first out the gate?
I don't know, but there was an audition that just came out with someone who a director who I think had worked with the NIDA Open program. I think her name is Kate Gall. She's quite a famous director now in the theatre world in New South Wales, and she just said, "Yeah, would you like to come and audition?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." I think she'd seen some of our work, and obviously myself, but she invited me and said, "Look, if you know anyone else who might want to play the female character in this role, would you be interested?" And it was a role specifically for an Asian character, an Asian Australian. The name of the play, I think, is Connie and Kevin and the Secret Life of Groceries or something like that. And when I read the play, I was blown away by it. It was a beautiful play about an Asian Australian growing up and dealing with all the racism and the stereotypes that I had dealt with as a child, but then kind of flipping it, like flipping all the stereotypes, showing that there were also stereotypes about the Caucasian woman that he falls in love with in the play, and they get together and they play with all the stereotypes, and then they flip them, which was wonderful. And it was a beautiful romance, and a romance with an Asian in a lead role. It was just too good to be true.
Wow.
So I just said, yeah, I'm absolutely doing this. Auditioned for her and got the role. And I had to actually do the performance prior to leaving NIDA. So there was a bit of tension. I almost got thrown out of the school for that reason. The head of
What? They won't let you work
yeah,
while you're at
they don't let
school?
us work while we're at school. And the head of acting, Tony Knight, we had a big fight. And, I said, Tony, throw me out. We're 3 weeks or 4 weeks away from being from this being over. Throw me out. Who cares? I couldn't care less. Like, this is work. This is the whole point of what we're in NIDA for. And eventually we sorted it out, and they all came and supported the performance, and John Clark came and everything. That was really nice. But that was my first role. And then I was late to showcase because I was auditioning for another role, Disney Playhouse, that John Clark, his wife, was producing, and she got me out to audition on the morning of our showcase, and so I had to rush back to showcase because I was auditioning for her, and then straight after showcase, the minute I got an agent, so before I even did the interviews with the agent, I landed that role for Playhouse Disney, which was just a show for kids, being the host for this kids show. And so when I got my first agent, I said, I've got something for you to negotiate. I got this role, and we're going off to Spain to shoot the studio sessions of all of this pretty soon. And they were like, oh, great, wow, fantastic. So I was pretty lucky in that I just got a lot of work early on, and there were a lot of ads that came in that I was doing, and I guess, like you said, maybe there weren't a lot of Asian actors also at the time that had trained, and so it was easy to then go through the system and then get cast for anything that was, specifically for an Asian character, and that's what I did. And that's then led in, of course, to Power Rangers, which came up later that year.
Just going back to Playhouse Disney, were there any Asians at that time? Because it's not. I know most.
No, and
like, were you the first, or
I'm not sure, but the reason why they did that was because they wanted to do Playhouse Disney Australasia, and so Playhouse Disney was rolling out to all of Asia and Australia, and so they thought, well, let's have one Asian and one Caucasian, and have them host this show so that we can market to all of Asia as well, and so that's why I was.
And this brings me, of course, why you were pretty much ideal for that, because you not only had done the acting, but you'd done the dancing at WAPA, your certificate of dancing that how long was that? A year course, or
actually that was just a year course, just a certificate of dance, and I mean that's an interesting story because I wanted, when I was in medical school, I did 2 extracurricular activities, outside of trying to get through uni, and that one was acting, which I loved, and the second one was dance, which I absolutely loved. In fact, I wanted to be a dancer when I was in medical school, and so much so that I got to the point of talking to. I mean, WAPA brought me in and said, we'd love to offer you a position to be in our full-time dance course, and I had several teachers who, at one stage, it was my dream because one of my teachers was from the Sydney Dance Company, and he sat me down one day after class and he said, Jason, how much do you love medicine? I said, not that much. And then he just said, because you could be a dancer, you could be a professional dancer. And I went, what? And he said, yeah, if you trained in 1 or 2 years, you could be in some of the biggest companies in Australia, and maybe 3 or 4 years you'd be in an international company. I was like, what? Wow. And it was a moment that I will remember all my life because it was a turning point for me. I'd always dreamed, I loved dance. I love contemporary dance, and I just went to these classes, so much so, like I was doing about 20 hours, 16 to 20 hours of dance a week. And so
wow.
That means some days I was doing 4 hours back to back, like Saturdays, Sundays, would do 4 or 5 hours, just classes back to back. And I loved it so much that I thought, I want to make a career out of this. But thank goodness, some of them, all these teachers and mentors of mine who were in dance at the time sort of got together when I started getting a little bit more serious about it, and I went to WAPA, and then he turned around about 6 months or 8 months later and just said, Jason, just to be sure, none of us want you to give up your medical studies. That's really important. So you could do it after your medical studies, like you can, and also he then gave me the reality of dance, which is, he said, look, myself and my wife, we've been professional dancers all our lives. We hit 30 and we gave up all our lead roles, right? You don't do leads after that. And then when you're about 35, 40, you're just teaching for the rest of your life. And we have arthritis at 40. It's hard sometimes to climb up a mountain or do anything that usual people do, still. It's a really, really tough career. And nowadays you just don't have star dancers like the old days. Like everyone anywhere in the world can be a kind of a local star, but you won't get that sort of fame that other people used to have. And so it gave me the reality of it all. And that it was then that I decided, okay, well, I love dancing, but maybe not that much that I want to have such a short career. And I thought, the next best thing, acting. I love that. And you can work till you're 80.
There's always a
yeah.
role.
And so I was quite practical about it, and I said, I don't want to give up medicine. And at this stage, I was halfway through, and I don't want to just, I guess take that big risk of not working or working like crazy, as a dancer to make ends meet. And so I just continued my medical studies, and then decided I'll give acting a go.
So you were actually contemplating on giving up medicine when this teacher said,
yeah,
and then he put this idea in your head, then said nothing for 6 months, and then just came back and gave you the reality.
Yeah. I think I'm very glad, because I think I started exploring it, and I think they saw it too. But one thing that I love about those mentors is that they looked after my life like wholly. Like they didn't think, God, I should just push him into it. They were always really good at going, but wait, let me take care of your life first. There is this dream. And then he said something really powerful too. He said, what you get out of dance, you can get whether you are a professional dancer or not, right? And it's the love of it, it's the passion, it's coming to these sort of classes. He says, I still love it, and I'm doing classes in Perth. He used to dance for the Sydney Dance Company, but he said, no, I moved here and I love it. I choreograph and I do that. And he said, so you can get the love, you can get all the benefits of everything that you love about this without having to go through what, many of us do, and without all the, the drawbacks. So that made me rethink it all as well. And yeah,
So
go ahead.
no, I'm just kind of curious because of why you initially went into medicine. Because I'm surprised to hear you say that this wasn't something that you super passionate about.
Yeah, because I think I don't think I'd ever had any inkling of how you would spend the rest of your life, right? At 17 or 18. I just didn't know. And I think most people don't know. So you just choose whatever you kind of get into, or whatever you think might be good for your future, or you think you might be interested in. Having said that, I was pretty good at science and maths and all of that, And so I thought, well, if you're good at that, where do you go? You go to medical school, right? I also wanted to be a physicist. I also wanted to be, a biologist. I could have been, I could have gone down any of those tracks. But I think also it was pretty much in those days, for immigrant children anyway, that your parents sort of put into your mind that you should either be a doctor or a lawyer or a business school, right? In that order. And
right, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely your parents would have been proud that you went to medical school.
Yeah. And so I chose it on my own, because I went, well, have a look at law books. I'm not doing that. no pictures. uh, it's just all reading, right? And at least medical books was kind of fusing science of all aspects, like there was physics, chemistry, biology, everything together, and then it was kind of something that we put up on a pedestal, like doctors, medical profession at the time. But once I got into it, I started to think differently.
Okay. So how did you, given that this wasn't a primary interest, was it difficult for you to get through medical school? Or you did have some interest, so it kind of like wasn't too bad?
Yeah, I got by. I really got by in medical school. Like honestly, my friends will tell you too. I spent the least amount of time that I could at medical school. So I think for most of my time there, I skipped afternoon lectures to go to dance, and then skipped study most of the time to go to acting classes at night. So I did morning classes and any tutorials that I had to go to because they took the role, and then I crammed. So it's not a great foundation for a doctor, right? Um,
I did the
yeah,
same. Cram.
well,
Did you have a week of
yeah,
study before all the exams?
SWAT pack, right? Used to call it. And
SWAT
but the
bag,
thing
yeah.
is, everyone was doing it. So at least I was using my time off well, because everyone is going to cram anyway. All my friends were cramming like crazy and, hardly did any study. I think medical students were good at that. I think because you're getting kind of the cream of the crop from high school who were really good at studying
Yeah.
or who really knew their own study styles anyway. And then they got into medical school and they thought, we'll do the same thing. Like, why not? Just wait till the end, last 2 weeks, and then just cram everything in. And, you know, so I don't think I was doing anything particularly different to a lot of people. It's just that on my time off, I spent it, in other extracurricular activities.
Yeah. Well, good job on that. And of
Well,
course,
you too.
you're you're not only graduated, but you had the discipline to enroll in the GP training course and complete your GP
Yeah,
accreditation.
that's right. And the interesting part about that was the way out for me. So I graduated, and of course we all did our internship and suffered deeply, deeply through, as we know. Internship was really hard for anyone out there that doesn't really know about how doctors go through internship. It's a pretty grueling time, and for people who by and large are resourceful, have to be a certain amount of intelligence to get into medical school, and then be able to study and be able to learn and be able to find things out by themselves and work on their own. For those sorts of people to go into internships and to be crying on a daily or weekly basis, as many people in my year were, guys and girls, because of the stress, it's just remarkable that anyone gets through it all, right? Because it's so stressful. You think medical school is stressful, wait till you get to internship and resident years, right? It was really stressful. I don't know if it was the same for you, but I mean, we all got
Yeah,
through it,
I mean,
but there are a lot of people who are very, very stressed all the time.
yeah. I think emergency was the most stressful for me
Yeah.
because there's so much pressure to to
Yeah.
get
Or,
the work
or,
done
or
and to
night
work
falls,
things
right?
out.
When you just were
Yeah,
doing overnight shifts and you had to look after a 700-bed hospital, and you really didn't have enough experience to do much without calling a registrar who was sleeping or a consultant who was sleeping and didn't want to be woken up. And, so it wasn't a nice, touchy-feely environment. People were pretty angry when they were woken up and had to deal with things that you should have been able to deal with, but you couldn't because you skipped that
yeah.
lecture. So the interesting thing was I thought, well, I'm going to get out of this. I want to leave and I want to pursue acting somewhere down the track. And that's when I applied for GP program. And in case people don't know, medicine in Australia at the time was a 6-year program, and then you had to do internship anyway, or you don't have a license. And then to get out of working in the hospital, you have to do a 3-year full-time program of general practice training.
Yeah, and that was a new thing.
That's right.
Like around when we graduated,
Yeah.
it was like it just come in like 1 or 2 years, because previous to that, you could just do your internship
And then you're done.
and go straight into
That's right.
GP land.
That's right. And so when they brought that out when we graduated, we had to do general practice training for another 3 years after our internship. And that meant doing more kind of resident work while you study and while you do more exams, and all sorts of learning and assessments and stuff for another 3 years. So it was essentially 6 plus 4, right? It's 10 years training,
Yeah, 10
before
years.
you're allowed to be a GP. So, and then of course it was competitive. So all the people who wanted to leave the hospital system, which was everyone, well, everyone who didn't want to specialize. So anyone
Yeah.
who wanted to get out and have a little bit of freedom and have a little bit of a lifestyle outside of the hospital system, which was, like an 80-hour week, essentially, 60 to 80-hour weeks, they had to become a GP. And you couldn't become a GP without entering the program. And the year I got into the program, they were only taking, I can't remember, but it was a small fraction of the people that applied. So it was something like 100 people into the program, and there were like, 1,000 people applied. Something like that.
Wow.
Something crazy. So a lot of new graduates who were coming in, or new graduates from the internship program, were applying, and then a lot of registrars were also applying because they wanted to leave the systems thinking, I've had it, I'm done with the hospital system, I know a lot, I've got a lot of experience, I should be a GP and just have a lifestyle and start a family and all that kind of stuff. So there were a lot of older doctors that wanted it, and a lot of younger doctors that just said, I'm done with the hospital system after a year. And it was really competitive. So the interesting thing was that I got in on the first try, even though a lot of other registrars more experienced than me had applied. And why I got in came down to one thing. I told the truth. And it was really interesting because everyone was preparing for their interviews by saying things like, oh, I love Aboriginal health, I love going out to the country, I love community health, I love all of these things that, I will do while I'm in training. In other words, you can send me out to the country for 3 years if you like. They were basically begging for them to take them. I think your cord is coming across your camera or something. But I just went in there and they said, well, Jason, why do you want to be a GP? And I said, the hospital system doesn't agree with me. I want a lifestyle. I've been doing all these extracurricular things like dance and acting, and I want to pursue that for the rest of my life, and I want to have a balance. So if I could work part-time as a GP and then be an actor, be a dancer, write, be an artist somehow, I'd love to do that. Oh, do you have any interest in particular in community health, remote health, Aboriginal health? Not really. My interview was over in 20 minutes, right? They nodded and they just went, okay. And I was out. It was so quick. And I remember because we were all sitting around, waiting for each other's interviews, right? And I was out really fast. And I was like, well, I didn't want to lie. I don't like to lie. And all my friends went in and they had rehearsed, all their answers and everything. And I wasn't acting. Maybe they weren't great. But I always thought truth was good. And I remember I was the only one in my batch that got in that year. Most of my friends had to reapply the following year, or even the following year after that. Some of them took
That's
3
amazing.
years to get in. And I was kind of amazed by that. I had no idea, but I just got in. Shortest interview ever. Everyone else had 40, 45-minute interviews. I came up. But then when I started the program, I found out why. Started the program, and then I had all these supervisors, right? They would sit in with you as you were doing your medical practice, and I was sent to the country and everything. And when I got to the country and I got my supervisors, they all said one thing. They said, we heard about you, Jason. You're the one that's doing acting and dance and writing. Yeah, let's talk about that. You know, when I was younger, I always wanted to do literature, and I was trying to be a writer, and blah blah blah. I said, oh really? And then we had this wonderful conversation where almost all my supervisors only wanted to talk about life outside of medicine. And then they asked me, so what are you doing now? And I said, oh, well, I'm doing the amateur drama in Bunbury where I was stationed. I'm doing a musical here, and oh, I'm doing that, and I was doing a dance program, and blah blah blah. And they all talk about that at the expense of my training. And sometimes I'd have to stop them and go, sorry, Prof. Do you think we should call the next patient? Oh yeah. Call the next patient. And the patient would come and go, and I'd ask for feedback. You know, how do you think I handled that? Oh, don't worry about that. Let's talk about your acting again. And they just go into talking about my life. And I realized that there were so many people, and I started getting known for that somehow. That somehow all my supervisors knew that I was the one that pursued something outside of medicine. And I did psychiatry, I went back into the hospital system because we'd have to do 2 years right back in the system, and did psychiatry there. And again, my registrar said, oh, Jason, I know you want to be an actor. Yeah, I've been reading all these books. And all our conversations would always be about everything other than medicine. And what I realized was there were a whole lot of people just like me that wanted to have a work-life balance, that wanted to have a lifestyle, that wanted to pursue something outside of the day-to-day of medicine. And that's where we connected. And I think in the early interviews, that's what they liked. That they said, that's GP material, that's a general practitioner. The people that want to do medicine all their lives, that, either they're lying or they're not the sort of person that's going to connect with people at the community level. And I think, in a way, they were right. Like, in a way, I felt like I loved that aspect of general practice, that I was connecting with the community and talking to them. And, I really enjoyed my time in general practice, working at all the various practices I did work at, because most of the time I just talked to patients about other things, Their health problems were pretty, generally pretty easy to manage, and then you have some time to talk about other things. And they loved the fact that I was doing other things,
That's amazing. That actually makes me think of when I used to get haircuts.
Yeah.
The ladies there that used to cut the hair, they'd say, yeah, 80% of the people come here for the social interaction.
And
it's not for the haircut.
And I sort of wanted to develop a practice that was like that. I had a lot of patients who came back, not just for the social, but because I listened to other things. I mean, something we learned in general practice training was, people walk in with a condition, like a balloon, but sometimes they want to talk about other things. And there are all sorts of complex social community issues that they have that are feeding into that, whatever problem they have. And I actually practiced that because I found that was far more interesting than treating the cold or treating the cough or whatever it was. And I'd go, oh yeah, you've got this cough, that's cool. How's life in general, and how's your job? And remarkable how things, a simple question like that would just open up, sometimes a can of worms, but it would help to develop a relationship that was very long running and, immediately engendered trust. And it was a remarkable time to be able to have an insight into so many different people. It was great for me as an actor as well, because you got to see so many different people's lives, the way they coped. You got to see people at their highs and their lows, on their birthbed, on their deathbed. Like, it was an incredible experience to have gone through medicine, actually. Very privileged position for us to have had, actually. So I don't regret it at all. It was amazing, yeah.
No, it sounds like it was very valuable to you. So that was like you spent 3 years doing that. So at that time, you were just doing all the acting still part-time.
Yeah.
So when you finished the GP, was when you actually had applied to NIDA?
Yeah. So I was old. Like, I was going to be can't remember now. We graduated
Late 20s, 30?
24. I was late 20s, 29, around there. I was
Yeah.
working at practice already, and then that was when I auditioned for all the drama schools. And yeah.
Oh, so you actually auditioned for a number of schools.
Yeah, I auditioned for WAPA in Australia, VCA, and NIDA. The three.
So you had to fly around to
Oh no, they
audition,
came
do
to
all the
Perth.
auditions?
So all of them have
Oh, right, okay.
do satellite auditions. So they came to Perth, and you know, it's all the same people auditioning for all the three schools. So you get to know them
Yeah, yeah.
well, and yeah, it was a fun time too.
So did you get, was NIDA the one that accepted you? Or, I mean, did you choose NIDA? Or they were the main ones that said, yeah, we want you?
Well, I was really lucky too. I got accepted by all three of them, and I don't know
Your luck
why.
never, your luck never stops.
Yeah, dude, I think I've been very lucky through my life, but maybe it's something unique. You know, again, once something unique about this guy, maybe, oh, he's an Asian Australian, you know, maybe we need more diversity. I don't know. But I was taken
Yeah.
care of by so many good people. Like at WAPA, I had auditioned once while I was doing I did an acting certificate program there too while I was while I was still working at a hospital. I was doing psychiatry there, I think, and I did this part-time acting program there, and then we had an audition day. You know, most of those people doing these certificate courses were trying to audition for WAPA, and so we did an audition day. We did a Shakespeare, and we auditioned to this guy who was kind of like the Shakespeare kind of expert in Australia, and he was currently the head of acting at WAPA. And so we auditioned for him, and then nothing happened. He sort of directed me a little bit, and then he just kept looking at me. And then that was it for that day. And then I got a call from his office. They found me at the hospital. And I got a page, and he said, "Yeah, so and so would like to meet you sometime at his office." I said, "Okay." So I got called to his office, and I had this meeting with him, and he just said, "Jason, I would never encourage anyone to go into the acting business because it's a horrible business and it doesn't support many people. And but I do know that some people are born to act. Like they have it in them and they have to act or they'll die. And if you're one of those people that has to do this, then we would like to help you and we would love to have you in our training program." And that was it. And I just went, wow. Oh, um, okay. But he said, but don't just choose us. There are a lot of other programs out there, and just keep us in mind. Let's keep this conversation going. But towards the end of the year, when we have these auditions, just let me know. And he was really good because I then auditioned for all the other schools at the end of that year. Or it was a little while longer because knew I wanted to finish my training with GP programs so I could be out. And then I came back and auditioned for the schools, and he was still around. I think he was still head of acting, so I kind of knew. I think I'm in there. I'm okay there, and auditioned. And then I came back and I got into all the three schools. And the interesting thing was the schools actually let me know prior to the usual official results. So for NIDA, they weren't as transparent, but they pretty much pulled me aside and also said, "Have you been to Sydney before? Do you know where you could live? Do you know blah blah blah?" I said, "Oh, okay. Isn't this premature? You haven't offered me a place." "Yeah. Oh, okay, but yeah, we'll contact you soon." But the VCA did, and my last audition with the VCA, they also just pulled. I mean, it was a private audition anyway. They just said, "Well, Jason, we would love to have you at the VCA." I think they do that sometimes because they are competing for the same batch of students. So obviously, everyone just wants to get the students that they want, and whatever reason, they'll they liked me that year, and or maybe I fit something that they wanted that year. But then I went back to this guy at Whopper, and I said, look, I've just gotten, I think I've gotten into these schools. What do you think I should choose? I mean, I think you're obviously a wonderful teacher and blah blah blah, and you know Whopper's a wonderful program, and I could stay here in Perth. And he said, go to NIDA. He said, go to NIDA, because you need to be where the industry is. You need to be where the agents are. That will serve you a lot better than Perth. We've got a wonderful program, but you're away from the whole industry, and you should be seen. So I've been really lucky in that I've had very unselfish, wonderful mentors along the way. You know, and not everything was rosy, but you know, just people who've looked out for me early on, that helped guide the way and made things a little easier, and gave me inspiration when I needed it. You know, when I was going through the medical program, and I was just like, oh my God, this is so long, this is so hard, how am I going to get through it? And little moments of inspiration to just go, we think you've got what it takes to have a career, but they'd also give us the practical part. But it's really tough, and you might never make a living out of this. But if you have to do it, let us help you. And I love those words.
Well, that's
you know,
that's so awesome, having that kind of support, and that being told the truth, and that's wonderful to have. Yeah, very awesome. And just awesome.
Yeah, unique. I think I don't think many other people have had that, but I've been very lucky in that sense. And maybe because also I was older. They also knew that I was doing something else. It was interesting for them. Maybe it was interesting that, oh, here's a doctor, you know, who's studied and done all this, but he can also maybe act. It would be wonderful working with someone like this, maybe. I don't know. People, I think now as a director, I look for interesting people to work with, right? Interesting people to talk to, interesting people that I want to spend my time with. So you're looking for that combination, not just can he act or not. And yeah. I think that might have played into it too.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. So that's how you landed in Sydney, and so pretty much before that you were all in Western Australia. You were Perth pretty much the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh wow! So yeah, up until your late 20s, that was the. Yeah. And so Sydney was your first time outside.
Yeah. And I loved it. I mean, Sydney. I missed home. Missed my family, but I loved Sydney and that sense of something bigger, you know.
No, just with all the stuff that you're just saying about these teachers and coaches saying they could see something, I just want to throw in there as well. You know, one of the things that I loved when you shared, I can't even remember when you shared it with me, was that Bear La video. How did I mean, this was back when we didn't have the internet. So I'm just trying to remember, how did I ever get to see that? Because it was on the VHS. And I'm just trying to remember how the opportunity came where you could share a video, because it was so much more difficult back then.
I can't even remember. Was it on a VHS or even on a CD?
Yeah, I've got the VHS.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it must have been then. I mean, we were...
I've kept it as my private collection.
Wow. Yeah, I still have it too. It was so fun, and that was, by the way, the voice of the bear was done by my first acting teacher, Wilson McCaskill, who's still in Perth and now running a wonderful program for kids called Play is the Way. He uses acting training to do behavioral modification for children who are struggling at school for whatever reason. And it's wonderful. He developed it through the acting training program that he had on Wellington Street back in Perth. It was called CAF, and that's where I started learning all, acting, and it was one of his students that got into NIDA and became one of the tutors at NIDA, Carlton, who came across and was one of the auditioners in Perth. And I think that may have helped too. I mean, they kind of knew each other, and Wilson sort of said to him, "Well, Carlton, look out for this guy. It's Jason. He's one of my students." And then Carlton and I became good friends to this day. We knew each other through NIDA. He taught me how to edit and produce and stuff, and then we stayed in touch a long time. And he was the one at NIDA who said to me, "I think you should be a director," which I didn't take well at the time either, because it meant it was kind of an affront to my wanting to be an actor, because it sounds like someone saying you're not an actor, you should be a director.
Yeah.
You know, so but many years later I have to say, yeah, I should have listened to all these people all the way. But you know, sometimes when you're young and you've got a path in mind, and you know you're young and arrogant, you don't listen, or you don't have the capacity to listen to what they say.
Yeah, you're not ready for it.
You're not ready for it. And so
Yeah.
I had to take my time to find my way there.
Yeah, but it's all come together very well for you, I think,
Well,
in terms of the grand scheme of
well,
things.
thank you, Derek, for saying that. But you know, it's not without a ton of struggle, and that's
Oh
because,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely, absolutely.
and maybe we should focus more on that, because people watching it.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about
Yeah.
that. Let's talk about the struggle. I mean, so far, from what you've shared, it seems like things have kind of worked well for you. Things were flowing for you for the most part, in terms of having these right people come into your life, give you the right direction, and you being open to it, following that direction. Yeah, I'd love to hear about some of the struggle in terms of, I know for me, when I moved to Sydney for the purpose of, because that's where the entertainment industry was, and I had at that time a burning desire to be like, I wanted to be an MTV VJ, and I thought, yeah, I want to go to Sydney and all that. But I had no idea really. I just had this foolish belief that, yeah, I could do this, but without understanding that there is actually a lot of craft behind it, which is why I really admire the fact that you've done the acting training. Previously, just for another example, I never gave a second thought about voice training, because I thought, hey, if you can communicate, if you can talk to somebody and get your point across, you don't need, what is this voice training? And then you actually introduced me to Bill Pepper.
Right.
Back then, I think it was one of your house parties. I remember meeting Bill. I had no idea who he was, but of course he's a very well respected voice teacher. And years afterwards, I actually spent probably 2 or 3 years getting training from him one-on-one at his place, and that's when I fully understood. Wow, there is so much to learn, to master, to you know. It's just, and that's why I think, wow, you've mastered the body through the dance, you've done the acting, you've done the piano, something that we didn't touch upon before, but I know that you've got the Amos.
That's right, yeah.
Is that like, it's kind of like the first level above grade 8 where you can teach.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got all these amazing skills in terms of control of your body, your voice. So I think that's amazing.
Well, thank you. I mean, but yes, there are a lot of struggles to get there, and there's so much to learn. And sometimes I wonder if, you know, well, I do sometimes question if all of it is worth it. Would I put my son through all of that? Like, I struggled a lot, and a lot of effort put in, obviously. Dance was really tough, like, you know, the 16 hours, 20 hours to try and master something that you know. And I have to say, I don't think I'm a master. I'm probably a jack of all trades. That's another word for this. But, you know, I love the journey. That was the biggest part of it. And for anyone out there listening about this, I think it's most important to just love the journey, and that's why I went on it. I wouldn't have done it, and I wouldn't have done the training if I didn't love it. I love the training sometimes more than the actual performance. So, you know, when I arrived and I started doing plays, like in Singapore at least, I got the opportunity to, you know, do Shakespeare out in the park with directors flown in from London, and then we were performing to 2,000 people a night. And I sometimes couldn't wait till it was over. And then I started to question, am I really an actor? Do I really love this acting? I love the rehearsals, and I love training. I love the rehearsals because I was training with a new director. I was training with people outside, but I didn't love doing the shows. I know there are some people who are actors and who are musical theater actors in particular who will do you know, 500 shows a year and love it every night. I can't wait to go on, can't wait to do it exactly the way I did it last night. I couldn't stand it. So I was not one of those performers that wanted to do show after show. And that was when at least I got the experience of that here in Singapore, and I realized that's not for me. So what do I love? And it took me a while to realize that I love creating a story. And then I don't necessarily love being the actor in that story. I can be it and I can do it. And I'm sorry, I think my son is playing in the background.
So good.
But I love just creating the story. But having said that, I had to go through a lot of training to know how to do that. A lot of acting training first, the building blocks, and then dance training I felt was something that I loved. I didn't do it consciously because of that. Music training was something that my parents started for me. I didn't consciously want to do that. But once I got into it, I think there's an obsessive quality about me that went, I want to finish this. I want to finish it at a certain level. I don't want to just dabble. I'll keep going and keep going until that level. And then when I feel like I've mastered something, not everything, but I've mastered something enough for me to use it, and have some control over it, then I'll go out and do my own thing.
Where do you think you got that from, this desire or need to want to not just dabble, but have some level of mastery over a particular skill?
I don't know. I think, I sometimes look at that because all my family, we had the same upbringing, right? And I think about this now because I have a son, and I go, is it the upbringing or is it genetics? Because we all went through the same music, we all achieved the same level of music. Actually, it was my brother and my sister who went to special art courses, who were identified as having talent in the arts. And it was me, the black sheep, who was actually identified as not having the talent. So I didn't get into special art courses. I didn't get special scholarships for anything because of my artistic talent. And I was the one that my music teacher said, yeah, he struggles a bit. Like he always just has to work a little bit harder. And I remember when we went up for our AMUS exams, this sort of piano exam, for that, my music teacher, I remember, was always expecting that I would be the one that would fail. And I came back and I thought I had failed because I had to restart a piece. I started playing, and the AMUS is set up as basically you have to have basically 4 or 5 pieces, like a sonata, different regions, and you have to play them all by heart on a concert grand in a big auditorium. And that's it. It's not, like other exams where you can have some music or whatever. Everything's by memory, right? Like a concert. In other words, you're training to be a concert pianist. And I went in there, and it's like a concert too, that you don't have false starts, like you don't make mistakes. So I made a mistake. I went, and I knew at that moment I failed, because you don't do this in a concert. You fail. And I just went, I'm sorry. May I please start again? And they said, sure. As if, what's the point? Now we just have to wait through, because you do a false start, you fail. And then I did the piece and I put everything into it, just enjoyed it as much as I could, nervous as anything. And I came back and I told my teacher I had a false start, and she said, oh, don't worry, well, next year. So and then a few months later, she came to our door, and she had 4 buckets, huge buckets of ice cream. And she did this because she always got my brother and me, our names mixed up. And she always said, oh, I'm so sorry. Every time I get your names mixed up, I'll give you an ice cream. I owe you an ice cream. And for what, probably 15 years of our life, she had said that. And
I'm just curious, what is your brother's name?
Gabriel.
Okay, so it's totally
clearly different. So,
Do you look alike?
I don't know. Maybe. Not really. But she would always just, Jason. She would always do that. I owe you an ice cream. And then she had 4 buckets of ice cream. It was quite moving for me. You opened the door and she was just there. and she had these ice creams, and she said, "What I owe you, you passed." And she just said, "You know, they here's your certificate." And the interesting thing was I was the first one in my family to pass, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So your brothers and sisters also attempted and failed.
Yes, they attempted, and I don't know why, but on the certificate when I look at it and then the results, they didn't mention that I had false start. And all they said was his interpretation was so unique, and it passed, and that was it. And I can only bring it back down to coming up to that exam. I just went, I will never, you know, because my sister and my brother, my brother has both talented musicians, and my sister was always technically perfect, like her technical work and everything perfect. And my brother was always great at, you know, sight reading, all the other exercises and everything, and plays beautifully as well. But the only thing I could do, and the only thing that I loved doing and that I worked every day on, was the interpretation of the piece. And because it was telling story, like I went, this piece is about death. You know, I was playing this piece and I went, in my own head, this is, you know, Dylan Thomas's "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night." I just read that poem and I said, that's this piece. It's about someone, you know, letting go, but can't let go and shouldn't let go. You know, and then I played that piece and I went, every day I was just working on it, and I went, my fingers are not allowing me to do that. I need to be able to play this note this way. And so I would work on it to the point that my fingers bled. Like I was practicing 6 hours a day at that point, leading up to my exam. They bled. I couldn't play anymore. Some weeks I had to stop for 3 days, like, you know, under my nails and everything, they were bleeding.
That's
so
crazy.
But it was my love for expression that I think got me through. That my love for expression, and then how am I going to get the skills to be able to express the way that I feel I should be able to. And I think that's what got me through. Not my technique, because I'm a horrible piano player. I can't, you know, if you asked me to play a piece now, I couldn't. And that's why people are weird, are confused. But you got your AMOS. You can just play something. No, I can't. The only thing I do now is compose. I can do that, but I can't play. And so I have to compose digitally because I have to fix my notes. I have to go. But now the beautiful thing is when I do it, you know, digitally, I can fix the velocity, how hard I hit that note, the attack of that note and everything. I go, oh, I can do it once, and then I can just...
You don't have to be technical.
I don't have to do all the technical things. You know, it may not be perfect, but it's more than good enough for what I now do, which is express through movies and digital space and everything. And at least I can express, and I can now express through composition, you know, which I also loved, and that was all. So I can see then that it was always about how can I express myself and tell a story, and then the technique was just my way to get there. But even then, yeah, I like to write and compose as much as I could. I was trying to learn that. But yeah, I think in those early days I had a massive desire to learn and learn and learn so that I could express myself.
I'm just curious also in terms of, it seems like you thought very deeply about these things. To you, is it a thinking process, or do you visualize, or what is the kind of, I don't know, what is your process when you come up with things, or when you create and you express?
I don't know. I don't think it's linear. Like, I think it's very similar to mathematics. Do you remember when you were doing high school maths, you know, and you had a problem to solve, like it was some calculus problem or something, and you go through it all, and sometimes it isn't just a stepwise process, as much as the teachers say, oh, well, you just break down the problem into this part, then this part, then this part. Sometimes you just stare at it and you go, I don't know what the solution is. And only when the solution comes can you then talk about it in the stepwise process, you know, describe it. This is how I got there. And very often I remember doing math where it was just, yeah, I know the solution, so I'll give it to you. And then my teacher would say, Jason, stop doing it this way. You didn't show the steps, so I can't give you full mark. But I got the answer. Yes, but, I can't, you've got to show your process because if you didn't get the answer, then I'd have to give you zero, right? And so often I'd go, oh gosh, so now we have to show the steps, which is a hassle because I know that this is the answer, right? But how do you get that answer, right? And I don't know if this is absolutely true or not, but I think that our hindbrain, our primitive brain, is actually doing mathematics and doing all this fantastical leaps of faith thinking that we're so good at. Now, why do I think that's true? Because when you know how to put a tiny ball into a hoop 10 meters away, that defies all logic because you should not be able to make all these multiple calculations, that could go wrong at any stage and put that tiny ball into a hoop. It doesn't make sense that we can do that. Your front brain, your neocortex, is not doing those calculations. You're not doing that in math. You're doing that with your hindbrain, right? Your primitive brain, which is the same primitive brain that monkeys have that can jump from a tree to tree and not fall, right? That a bird has to be able to fly through the air at the speed that they're flying and to be able to land on a perch this thin and not slam into the wall, right? To be able to assess all of that mathematics and physics and work it out. So my theory is that we do all of our learning in the neocortex because that's the only way we know how to, and that gets processed and transferred eventually through training and practice and all that kind of stuff to the primitive brain, which is actually the nerve center, the true nerve center that can do all these calculations like that. Because we're born with it. We can make these calculations just by walking. We're doing all that. So I think that's where true mathematics works. Like we're doing those math problems and we're just staring at it and we go, oh, I can't work it out. Your neocortex can't work it out, but your primitive brain just goes, we did this before. Look, it's just this. Now transfer it to your neocortex and try and explain it. And that was my frustration back in those days. And I'm sure you've experienced it before. Similar things where you go, I know in my gut that that's the answer. Now I've just got to explain it to you to get those extra marks, right? To give those steps. And now I've got to get the neocortex to come in and go, oh yeah, it makes sense this way. So then I was composing in those days, or trying to compose, or learn how to compose in those days. And I went, where does composition come from? Where do you, like, you don't think up a melody. You don't go, oh, I'll start with G and then we'll go to B. Some people do that, right? Maybe they think that way. But most composition, I remember in those days, I'd sit at the piano and I'd turn off the lights and I'd rest my head on the edge of the piano and then I just let my hands, I close my eyes and let my hands just play stuff. And they would just play melodies. And the interesting thing was the deeper and deeper I kind of fell into this kind of alpha state, just kind of almost dreaming, the better the melodies were. They just came. And it went dun, 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 and you'd come up with a melody. Whereas where you're open and conscious and everything, I just couldn't do anything. And I do believe that the people who do come up with things, who think things up, who dream things up, whatever it is, it's at that state. Whether or not they can do that in an awake state, is a matter of practice. But I think that's where it comes from. That's where the inspiration comes from. And it's your hindbrain or your primitive brain that's doing all this amazing stuff and processing because it's so capable. Whereas I find that I think our neocortex, which is, by the way, the last thing that developed in evolution and the newest part of our brain, is actually not quite as complex, or it's doing different tasks. It's for language, it's for controlling, learning other new things. But when we learn them well enough, we transfer it to the brain that does it so well, that automates and that can calculate a million, things in a split second. I think that's where it comes from. That true inspiration, you have to access that, and then it comes.
So this whole thing that you're saying, where you used to just rest on the edge of the piano. Was that a process you kind of just worked out for yourself, or were you like taught or guided through this process of getting into this creative state?
No, I think yeah, I sort of discovered it because I like to compose, but the stuff that I was composing with my eyes open just didn't work. It was horrible, and then the more I kind of fell into this deep state, the better it was. And I mean, my parents, who were sleeping in the room right next door to our living room where we had the little piano, our piano, they must have heard so much clunking around on that piano deep late into the night. So I'd compose, or just sit there trying to compose stuff at, midnight, and then in for 2 hours in the dark, complete darkness. I loved it. And it was also a time for me to dream. Like I'd compose things and dream about what would happen on the theater on a stage, and then this music would come in, and then someone would walk in, and it was a beautiful dream state, and I loved it. So the more I did that, the more it worked, the more I kept doing it.
So I guess this is obviously something that you continue to use to this day when you're creating stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it something that you do on a daily basis, just in terms of or just when you have an idea you want to create something, then you access it?
Yeah. And I have to tell you, it's not an easy thing to do, to create. So it's exactly like the feeling that you had when you get up against an unsolvable problem and you're just staring at it, or staring at a wall, or just going, I can't think anymore. You're just at a brick wall, right? And so the process of creating is so hard that very few people actually do it, or few people do it well, right? I think a lot of people get stuck at the conscious level of trying to create, and then don't go into this level. But if you do this type of creating, it's also incredibly difficult, but I think it helps you at least create. So when we do create now, like for our films, for the music that I write now, it's sometimes I call it I tell everyone it's a horrible experience, because there's a level of panic and tension to try to get to a position or a place of no tension and sereneness and openness to try and create something. But you also have deadlines, and you also have an objective in mind for that. So when Christian sort of said to me, "You're going to compose everything for our film now," I was like, "Oh man, that's painful." And then going into that, usually 2 to 3 weeks, my wife knows it too. She said, Jason gets stressed out, and then weird things happen, like I'll get up in the middle of the night and just run to the piano and just plonk something down, because you dream things and you see it. It's all day in, day out. I just kind of try and lock myself away for about 2 to 3 weeks, and then try and just nut out just these little themes.
Yeah, I think I get the idea of what you're talking about. It's just like when you're just trying to, even just something simple, like when you're writing a proposal or project, it's always painful at the beginning because you've got all these different ideas and thoughts, and it's all muddled and messy, and you're trying to make sense of it, and then you just got to get through that terrible period until it all kind of comes together. Okay, and then once you get to that point, it's good, right? Because then you can see how it can all fit in, and now you're just polishing it.
Yeah.
At the
and
end.
then you can use your neocortex to kind of polish up things up, and so there is to those two. The hardest part is that 2 to 3 weeks of what I call that hindbrain work, of that kind of subconscious level work, which is really hard because you're doing it while you're conscious and trying to link the two. And then after that, the cleaning up, the orchestration, I call it. Like, so when I write the melodies now, and I started, obviously orchestrating for our films, like the orchestration part is very neocortex. It's just come back out. Okay, what can you do? Oh yeah, you can use the strings. What are the harmonies? Okay, what do you have to do? And programming those notes in is fairly easy. So it's kind of like when we write scripts too. Like Christian and I will go away, and a lot of it is also written late at night. We'll sit on a call and we'll just write the skeletons, and it's like, to me, writing the melody, the skeleton to it. Like, what happens? You know, the girl, he comes to Okinawa, they meet on a beach, he's looking for his lost girlfriend. That's it. And it'll take us 3 hours to write that. So it's not the content, it's not, you know, how much we write, it's the content. And
Yeah.
we did that for our film anyway, Jimami Tofu. We did 3 hours, 4 hours a night, and we'd get about a line of just what happened.
Wow.
And then they, you know, they go back to her house and talk postcards. That's it. And the next night. And then you go, okay, I like that. But to get there, you're throwing in all these other things because they could do a million things, right? They could. He sets a house on fire. He he gets angry. He does this and again. But it's just throwing all that stuff out there and then slowly kind of bringing it back in and going, we have to choose one thing to tell a story. And then you know what? We do that for 3 months, and then the script itself takes 2 weeks to write. Because it's all the dialogue. That's just blah, 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 blah. They just talk. We know exactly what they're doing here. This is what they'd say. So deconstructing it that way makes it far easier, I think, sometimes to write a script. Because now we go, no, you're not writing a script with all the dialogue. You're actually writing the skeleton. And when you've got a beautiful skeleton, and when you can tell that skeleton to someone, and they're moved by it, then you've got a script. And then you just fill in the skeleton with all this words, you know? Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Wow. So that so it took 3.5 months to go from concept to finished script.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lot of dedication there. You actually scheduled every night we're going to spend allocated this amount of time.
Well, I think that's something else that, you know, maybe you want to touch on, which is going back again to the struggles. The struggle is actually the grit, right? That famous TED talk about grit and teaching your kids grit. And I think, you know, we were just talking about that the other day because we've got this new startup, you know, and there are a lot of barriers. But when we look back sometimes on our Facebook photos and look at what we did a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you go, gosh, yeah, there is one thing that I think my upbringing, for whatever reason, gave me, which was grit. And like you said, what pushed me and motivated me to do all this and to finish? I think I'd have to say my parents, you know, who taught me that, no, when you start something, you just finish. You keep pushing through till you finish. And my mum once said to me, you decided to learn piano. I was 5, Mum. No, but you made a promise to me when you were 5 that if you started this, you were going to finish it. So you're going to finish it. And then she just put the finish line at Amos, and so you're going to finish it. And you can't stop until you finish. And I'm so glad that she did do that, you know, because I wanted to quit. Everyone wanted to quit at grade 4.
Yeah, I quit. I wish my parents pushed me.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to remember that now for my own child, but I learnt the benefit of grit. I learnt all the positive outcomes of just pushing through and persisting, because sometimes persistence gets you to a place where no one is. And I think my fellow business partner, Christian, and myself learned that just as kids, I guess, just worked hard at anything that we could do and learnt about grit and persistence and what pays off, you know, if you and how it pays off if you put that in. And so in any of our endeavors, like when we started a corporate company and wanted to make a film, it was just grit and persistence. Like anyone else could have done, you know, what we've done. But I think the grit and persistence took us to places where no one was.
Let's talk about that, because Banana Mana, that obviously, I know I've seen the evolution of that, and it was very different from how it started. I actually remember we were on a bus. Do you remember that? We were chatting about video and where things were going, the direction, and we were just chatting about, you know, doing that production type of line of business. And I remember we were talking about, at that time YouTube was just making an impact, and I remember talking about, it seems like everyone is now using YouTube to advertise and stuff like that. And I think you started Banana Mana looking to make advertorial type videos for people, right? That was the start, and then you progressed to doing corporate videos. And then there was a pivot point where you said, okay, why are we doing this? Do you want to share a bit about, that struggle? Because I know it's painful when you have to do videos for other people, because you're always working to their deadlines. Everything they say is correct, and you have to appease them, and you really don't have much control other than securing clients and hopefully getting paid when the project ends.
Hopefully is the key word. I do. That was very pivotal for us. We started a company with 4 people, 4 of my friends, and that's really hard because somewhere down the line we didn't see eye to eye anymore. But and we had to kind of buy out our friends and part amicably. But we did, and the turning point for us, for Christian and I, was through something that I did as an exercise all the time as a company. Because I always thought, if we ever start a company, I want to start it with our goal in mind, which is one thing, achieving your dreams, right? Silly little thing, but what we used to do is get together as a company, 4 of us, and I would ask them all these things. I'd say, okay, we've all got to write on a sheet of paper these answers. What is your dream 5 years from now? In other words, what's your dream job 5 years from now? If you were doing this, what would your day look like? Right? And it would be anything stupid you want, like your dream. It's like, I go into a glass office on the 64th floor of so-and-so, and my desk looks out over the ocean and blah, blah, blah. It could be anything. I have a team of workers under me to do all this. That can be your dream. And then I'd ask, what's easy to do for you on a day-to-day basis right now, and what's hard to do in your job? And we'd list the easy and hard. And by easy and hard, I meant not that you're capable of, doing a spreadsheet and the accounts. Not whether you're capable or not. If it's easy for you to do it, you just get up and do it because you want to do it. If it's hard, we put it in the hard basket if you put it off and off and off and off and off for 2 weeks, 3 weeks until you do it. Then we put that in the hard basket. In other words, what don't you want to do and what do you want to do? So in other words, I can reframe it by saying, what gets you up in the morning to this job and what keeps you late at night? Not because you have to, not because of a deadline, but because you can't tear yourself away from the computer because you're on a task that you love to do, right? So in essence, is identifying your passions and identifying where your passions don't lie. And then we took everything on the hard basket list and we got rid of them. One by one. I just said, we're going to get rid of all of these hard basket things. What? Stupid, right? But one of those things on the two hard basket lists, the thing that wasn't on anyone's like list, or the list that was easy to do, was dealing with clients. So we said, simple answer, we got to get rid of clients. What? That's crazy. Our whole business is predicated on this, So we said, well, how do we get rid of clients? Well, we've got to create content ourselves that people want to watch. So we're just creating for an audience versus going through a client, right? Client and their audience. So, and it developed something else. What that also kind of distilled into was one thought. And I think Christian came up with it one day when he showed me this YouTube video, and it was just like one of those inspirational videos about how to choose what to do in your life. And it was, the tagline at the end was, would you do it for free? In other words, choose what you would do for free. Do that. Okay, that's good. But then, so we had these corporate jobs keep coming into the company, and we weren't earning a whole lot in those days, but it was certainly better than today. Corporate videos were paying a little bit better than today, like maybe 20, 30,000, for a corporate video. That wasn't too much work for us. Big lot of cash for a small company. And they'd still come in, we got good jobs and good, word of mouth. And say to Christian, hey dude, another job just came in, $20,000. Not much work. You think we should do it? And he'd turn around and say, would you do it for free? Of course not. I'm doing it for the money. Of course not. And he said, then we're not doing it. And good on him he was the first one to say that, even though he just got married and he was also struggling financially. I was struggling financially too. And then it got even better. He said, no, let's change it. Let's change our question to, would you pay to do it? Because we'd pay to make a film. And we did. We went off and paid ourselves and paid other people to go and make a film. And we came back and we loved it. And it was a trip that we did actually to another part of Malaysia where we did two things. On the one side, we did kind of like corporate videos or advertorials for that place, travel videos basically on YouTube. And we'd started quite a good YouTube channel, a lot of subscribers and all that. We thought, oh, let's just make money doing this. And then the second part in that trip was making a short film that, of course, was making zero money and that we had to pay for. And we were very quiet on the plane back. The travel videos that we were making, really easy to make, right? I thought, that's a bit of a dream. Like, come on, we go around travel, we make these YouTube videos about traveling, and we just put it on YouTube and we earn money. Perfect business model, right? At least we shifted away from making, videos for clients. We were on the plane, and it was totally silent. And I knew he was thinking about the whole process, and I said, Christian, we did two things this trip. Which one would you do? Which one would you rather do for the rest of your life? And he said, the short film. I said, me too. Me too. And he said, yeah, I think we know what we need to do. We need to stop chasing the money. We need to stop chasing the business model that seemed like a low-hanging fruit. We need to do the things that we want to do for the rest of our lives, whatever that might be. And it was storytelling, right? Creating our own stories, creating our own experiences, and doing that. And so we said from that day on, okay, now we'll only ever do something if we can answer that question. Would you pay to do it? With a very, very strong yes. And it's been really powerful, I tell you. So many opportunities have come our way for whatever reason, and we always just ask ourselves, would you pay to do it? Of course not. Easy. But if you take that out, if you take that question away, there's so many ways you can convince yourself, convince each other to do something that doesn't speak to you. It doesn't speak to your soul. And that has changed our lives remarkably. All the things that we used to hate to do have disappeared. And we only do things now that we love to do. And I don't, people doubt us. We talk about this all the time when we get asked to speak, at conferences or whatever, about our company. And people always come up and just go, I'm inspired by that, but how do you do that? But it's really simple. You just throw it out. If you don't like to do it, if it's too hard to do, find a way not to do it. And sometimes it's something as simple or as pivotal as saying, let's not have clients. Let's not have clients. And that's what we did. And so we pivoted to making our own content. Difficult. We struggled financially as a company for a little while. But the amazing thing was when we got that corporate job and I said, Christian, we don't have money in the bank account. We need to take some money jobs so that we can get by. He said, would you pay to do it? And I said, of course not, but we have no money. He said, well, let me solve that. And so he's gone on the phone and he called the commissioning editor for Toggle at the time and said, do you have any work for us? We want to tell stories, but we want freedom. We want to tell them our own way. He said, yeah, actually I have. And the interesting thing is we then got commissioned to tell a story our way, total freedom. He didn't touch our scripts. He didn't edit anything. Didn't even see it, and we made that our first show, What Do Men Want? And had a blast doing it. And after we tasted that, we said, this is always possible. even with a client, we can do things our own way. As long as they trust us, as long as they work, So then you start to work in a different field. But then when our client started to impose things on us, we walked away. So they handed us another project after What Do Men Want? Went on. It was a web series. They took it and put it on primetime TV as a TV show, and then said eventually pitched for a telemovie. They greenlit a telemovie of ours, and then imposed a lot of restrictions on us. And we said, would I pay to do this? No. So we turned down their offer and went and did Perfect Girl. And we paid to do it with $1,000. Like the same thing. We sort of kept shifting, and we just kept saying, no, we don't follow the money. We follow our answer to this question. It's like, what do we do next that we would pay to do?
So I guess a lot of people, I mean, in terms of, you mentioned that a lot of people feel inspired by this story,
Yeah.
and it is very inspiring, but they're puzzled by how do you do that? And I guess a key question that I would like to know is how do you step away from the money? How do you make sure that you can survive through that period? I mean, did you have some runway? Did you make sure that you both had some money saved up? So you said, okay, we've got a 6-month runway where we can afford not to do work, and we can afford to focus on getting the kind of work that we want.
Well, I think maybe, yeah, you have to have something, right? Obviously you have to live, and Christian at the time was doing voiceovers, so I did the occasional voiceover and some occasional freelance work. I'd also built a company, ADB, an online company that was also giving revenue. And so, yes, there are ways in which to do it, I think, where you've got to be smart about it up front. So you've always got to say, well, if I want freedom, then I've got to have things that have a certain level of either passive income or that pays me enough on one day that I can do things 4 or 5 days afterwards. But even with the company itself, you've always got to think about processes that you can hack or deliver in a better, more efficient, less stressful way, right? Or things that you can get rid of. And we did that all the time, like just reprocessing. What can we get rid of? Well, can we do this any easier? Like just our accounts. Okay, well, Christian, I did this the other day. I created a Google form, and with all the categories of all the things that we could possibly pay out to, and can we just use that on our phones every day yeah, we did. And then we handed that over to our accountant, and our accountant loves it. Oh, that's great. I've got an Excel spreadsheet. Everything's categorized into the things that I need, and I can do it. It's so much easier than going through receipts at the end of every year, right? Just little simple things like that just transformed our lives, right? When we did the startup, we signed up to Xero. It's an accounting program. And
Yeah.
And it was a little sign up, and we got a little grant from the government to pay for most of it for a year. So we said, Christian, do you think it's worth it? Yeah, let's do it. And then we did a training course for 2 days, and now we're like, why didn't we ever do this before? It's amazing. It's automated. I can generate reports anytime I want. And, it's $30 a month or whatever it is. And it just works. It's like, there are tons of companies that don't do that. There are tons of companies that are doing everything manually. We've met with companies recently that we're dealing with when we're like, no wonder you have 16 staff. Like, are you kidding me? You're doing all this manually? That's why. You can automate all this. And that doesn't suit everyone. And thank God there are people that hire other people. But we always looked at it as, if we want to achieve what we want in our lives, our dream and our dream lifestyle, which is basically running a company, with a couple of people working out of their home office, but running a really good company that can scale, then we've got to automate a lot of processes. We've got to work out what we can't do and what we can do with leveraging technology, leveraging other people, by outsourcing to other people not in your country, necessarily sometimes. Yeah, I think all of those things can be hacked and used, and I don't think everyone thinks that way, because I think sometimes people just stop and think, no, this has to be done this way, and I can't think of any other way to do it, and it's inefficient. I mean, we just got a quote from an event company to do a movie screening, and we can't believe that after, this is getting into Cinewav, but after everything that we've talked about, you know, the quote is still way above and way beyond what we need for Cinewav, with all these added extras that are not, you know, Cinewav replaces speakers, and they've got a speaker system in the quote. And we're like, why do you need this? So it's remarkable that people don't think this way, and I think in this day and age especially, when the sorts of things that happen are happening, you know, we've got a pandemic, and post-pandemic, we have to think really differently, because people, I'm sorry, but travel is not going to just open up straight away. We're going to have this for years. Travel is going to be blunted for years. And even when that does come back, it's going to be very different. People need to be able to think quickly and create new models for business, new models for working together and collaborating. And I'm finding that not everyone thinks that way. They just want to go on. They're holding on to the past and want to continue on where they left off. You know, they think that one day the switch is just going to be turned off and everything will be back to normal again. And I just don't think that's going to be true.
No. See, that. You know, I'm with you on that. I'm always like you. You're always looking at ways of improving, especially like I remember just one little thing. Back when we were, I think early, not so long ago, a few years ago when I first came to Singapore, and I was looking at. You shared me a very simple hack in making a teleprompter.
Oh yeah,
out of,
that was very
out of
funny.
just like a little square box and getting a CD cover and put it underneath the phone, and there you've got a teleprompter.
Yeah, I mean that was. I mean, I saw that on YouTube. I didn't. You know, I think I saw that somewhere else on YouTube, but I just thought that was brilliant, and we used it so many times in our own productions, and it was so cheap, so easy to make. And then I was even thinking we should manufacture these, because someday everyone's going to want to use this, and we can make it a bit better than a piece of plastic in a box. And eventually now people have them, right? It's on, you can buy them everywhere. But yeah, it's the same thing and the same way of thinking we applied to filmmaking too, which was, look, we don't have a $50 million budget, you know, and I remember everyone around me in this industry was just going, well, we can't make it then. And then they just complain. Well, our films don't sell outside because we don't have a $50 million budget. That's it. If we did, our films would sell everywhere. But we don't, so they don't. And that's our problem. So we just need the money. And if you don't pay us the money, we won't make it. And I thought, that's a bit of a circular argument, right? And I'm sure even in Hollywood, they didn't get those $50 million budgets right off the bat. You know, it was private industry. They weren't funded by the government. Like, they just had to make films and take risks and make films and make money back at the box office or wherever. So that was part of what we did with Perfect Girl, when we took $1,000 and made a show and then got it out there. And at first it was just a web series, right? 10 episodes, threw it out there and went, I don't know what we're going to do with this. Like, what's a web series? Where does it get money back? You know, there's some web series festivals, so we entered them in some web series festivals, and you know, we got a lot of love back. Like, we won 3 North American festivals, and the interesting thing though was who we were up against. So the Canadian festival that we won, and a couple Atlanta, you know, even LA Web Fest, the competition were, and there's one video actually of the 5 we were up against. There was 5 North American, so it's Canada, America, US, Singapore, right? we were the only international series that got into the finals for that, for best series. And we didn't even go to Toronto because we thought, oh, they're going to give it to someone else, right? Why are we going to waste our money going up there? And then they, you know, messaged us the next day and said, you won. And we're like, what? Because we had seen the behind the scenes for all those other 5. They'd all been funded by their local government or the national government up to $500,000 to make a web series.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And they had these massive crews, right? So they had these Hollywood-sized crews with big Arri Alexas and massive light sets and jibs and rails and all this kind of stuff. And we had 2 cameras. We had 2 DSLRs, and that was just the beginning of the DSLR revolution, right? And we had 2 cameras, 4 people on set, including ourselves, who are acting and operating the cameras. We'd have to operate the cameras like this, flip out screen, put the microphone on a pole because we didn't have a boom op, and then we'd have to do a lot of scenes, kind of sometimes not moving around because we're like, no one's going to operate the camera and the microphone. So okay, go. Okay, and then we'll act, and then we did that and beat the competition. We got distribution. Like I had the weird idea of, hey, Christian, maybe we could edit this into one episode, like one hour episode, and we call it a film. So we sent that out, and then that's what eventually got the attention of Viki.com, that picked it up as an Asian series on their platform. And then 3 months later, they said Netflix called us and are interested in Perfect Girl. And so we ended up selling to Netflix, and we were the first drama from Singapore to sell internationally to the likes of Netflix. And it put us on the map. We got a big, we got a big article in the papers, and the minister at our Asian Television Forum mentioned us in a speech, a big mention, and we were like, wait, this all happened because of $1,000 that we spent. and this little series, and then everyone, I saw on all these forums, everyone said that we were lying, that we had lied about what we spent on it, that we had lied, that we obviously pulled all these favors that were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I was just so kind of amused by their reaction that they were basically saying that this isn't possible. And so we went on and started giving talks, and whenever we were invited to talk, we said, we'll show you how it's possible. We'll show you right here. Here's the camera, here's the microphone, and this is what we did. It's absolutely possible. But people didn't believe us. But that was it. I guess that was the grit, and that was the push through, and that's the constant persistence to do something, and then to break it down and say, how can we do this without anyone? If everyone rejects us, how do we do this anyway? And the same thing. It was the same thing for when we had to do our film. Everyone rejected us. No one wanted to fund us as filmmakers because they said, well, you're web series people. You did Perfect Girl, so you're YouTubers. So we'll fund your YouTube channel, but we won't fund a film. You don't know how to make a film. We're saying, but it's no different. We did an hour of content. Now we just want to do an hour and a half of content. You don't see that? They said, no, you're YouTubers. Everyone likes to think in such amazingly black and white ways. So they couldn't see the difference. They said, we just did an hour content, and what do men want was 6.5 hours. So we know how to do long form storytelling. Yeah. We want to now make a film, and then we said, okay, well, how do we do it without them? And we put a crew together of 6 people with DSLRs with 4 backpacks, and we went to Japan and filmed it. And yeah, so it's always fighting that, but we fight a lot of rejection, and fight a lot of doubt and cynics along the way.
Yeah, no, I think I just want to just track back to Perfect Girl. When I first saw it, I really loved it. And I think, what was really amazing about it was just so well written, and just everything was just done so well. And I'm not surprised it did so well in terms of, well, it is surprising, obviously, in terms of the competition and everything, but if just looking, and I haven't seen what the competition did, but just when I watched it, I just saw there was so much good quality there and just so well done.
Thank you.
The editing, everything was just very simple, very authentic, very real, and yeah, I just thought it was amazing because it felt like you're able to capture, you know, the story, and you're able to do it in such a concise way. There was no flab. It was just all good, you know. So
Thanks so much.
yeah,
It means a lot to me as well, Derek, and it means a lot to me that all the support over the years of you turning up and just being there at any one of our screenings. I think you've seen it all, because it's not just the fact that you make it, then you have to push through and screen it and get people to see it and try and sell it. And you know, we did all that. We went to Hong Kong Film Mart when we were nobody, when we were just corporate video makers, and we tried to sell, tried to understand the industry, and we did it on our own dime sometimes, and even the Singapore, whatever opportunities we had to be able to get up, move up, you know, in the, you know, chain of command in the industry, we did, and we followed through, because even though we got picked up by, Viki.com, which was kind of an online streaming channel, we had to push the news out that we were picked up before I think Netflix actually saw it. I think we believe Netflix saw news about us and about this kind of award-winning web series before they said, yeah, we're interested. But they said specifically to Viki, we want to see that show. We want to have that on our platform. And you know, and even doing things like that, it gets you in the papers, but you even have to push that. So you get on Netflix and you have to tell people about it. You have to tell the reporters and tell people that might get you in the papers, and then you get in the papers, and then you have to tell people that you got in the papers. You know, yeah, it's a constant shout out about yourself, which is, you know, why we do that constantly. But that's the struggle too. Is it doesn't just happen. Like, we didn't just sell to Netflix and then make a pile of money and retire. We didn't. We had to, you know, keep pushing and selling and trying to get, you know, more publicity and more support for our next project.
which is a good way to. What is your next project? I know. Are you doing, before we head on to Cinewav, are you doing any other filming projects at the moment, or that's put on hold now because the focus is Cinewav?
Yeah. So when we
Right.
so we talk about fixing all the problems, right? So we hack and fix any problem that's in our way. And so we always went around, you know, current barriers or current restrictions to find a way to do what we wanted to do or achieve our dream, which was, hey, Christian, do you think we could be the best in our country at, you know, at least put us on the map for telling great stories and high quality stories? And then we eventually did that with, I think with Perfect Girl, or even What Do Men Want, right? Hey, do you think we can sell internationally? All right, we managed that with Netflix. Do you think we can make a film? You know, like a film, like on a big screen that really moves people? And that was our next objective. Do you think we can make a film that moves people, like gets people to cry even, you know, laugh and cry? And that was a big thing. But how do we hack that without all these resources, without a $50 million budget? You know, how do we do that? And so we hacked a lot of those things, and a lot of it was using technology, leveraging technology like the Sony cameras that we use, you know, the sound that we use, the editing suites that we had, and, you know, asking for favors this time, asking for people to support us. And then we got into distribution, and not because we wanted to, but because when people looked at our film, they said, oh, it's an indie film with no stars. Couldn't care less. Don't want you in our cinemas. So we got rejections left, right, and center. Everywhere. Rejected, rejected, rejected. Didn't sell to many territories. Rejected. Sold to two little well, not little. We sold to China. We sold to Taiwan.
Wow, that's big.
It's big, but it wasn't theatricals. China was streaming. Taiwan, I don't even think they put it out to theatrical. They bought theatrical rights, but they didn't put it in theater.
Oh, they streamed it as well.
I think so. We didn't even hear from them, because generally when you sell to countries, they don't talk. A lot of them don't talk to you again. pay you
Really?
your maximum guarantee, and then they'll never give you any reports. And we heard this is true for many, many countries all throughout the world, you know. And so we said that's a bit broken because we have to hand over a file, and then they can do whatever they want with it, and then give you reports that are non-transparent. That's the current distribution system. And then when we got into cinemas here in Singapore, you know, the lion's share of it went to the cinema distributor, and we were taking home a tiny, tiny amount. So small that even though we became the longest running film in Singapore cinemas, we didn't have enough money to ever make another movie. We made more
Wow.
in selling T-shirts and scripts and CDs after every cinema session that we had than we made on a full house from the tickets. And so we said, this is really broken. The reason why it's broken is that cinemas are incredibly expensive to run, and there are lots of middlemen between getting to the cinemas that take a huge cut, 25, 30% before you. So you take all the risk, then a middleman distributor comes in and says, well, I'll introduce you to distribution exhibitors, but I'll take 30%. And then the distributor takes 30 to 50%. 50%, sometimes more. If it runs longer, sometimes they take more, by the way. So you take all the risk, but you get the tiniest, tiniest return. That we said, we're not going to do this. If we make another film, first we'll have to beg, borrow, and steal again to make a film, and we'll have to keep hacking it. And it doesn't make sense that we made a film that people love, but can't support because all the money goes somewhere else. So we decided to fix something, which was distribution, and something else that we also had a problem with, which was sound. We went to all the cinemas, and of 3 of the halls that we were playing in, we had to fix the speakers because they were rattling through our film. And brought it up to them and said, fix the back speakers, they're not working. Oh, well, no one else complains. Well, because no one else comes and watches their own film in your cinema. But seeing as we're paying so much for your cinema, we would like it to be a good experience, right? So we did that. They had to replace speakers, but it still wasn't great because, every hall has a different configuration and the speaker levels are not set up the same. So some halls, the bigger halls, we couldn't hear the surround speakers. In other halls, we could hear them really well. So we said, can you remix them for this hall? No. Same level for all films. Oh, okay. That doesn't make sense because if I'm sitting at this hall and I'm sitting down the back near the right, I'm just getting the right speaker blasting into me. I'm not getting a good mix. Do you know what the perfect mix is? Someone with a headset that's getting the mix that we gave. So we came up with this system called, a new software system, which is our new startup, called Cinewav, which allows everyone to watch a movie on a big screen, but listen to the audio from their smartphone with headsets on. And what we discovered when we first did our prototype was this gives everyone a perfect mix. We can even do what we call binaural, which is a simulation of 5.1 surround. And the simulation is so good that we've had so many testimonials from students, 18 to 21-year-olds, who say this is better than the cinema.
I'm just really curious. Did you have to work out your own algorithm to get this 5.1, or the 5.1 is a set standard that you just have to plug into your system and then it creates it?
Yeah, we don't create it. You can do it with software. So you can do a binaural mix down from 5.1. I mean, binaural is stereo. It's just a slightly different type of stereo. And binaural has been around since 1960s. It never took off because there was never any platform that required users to only use headphones, right?
So what is binaural versus stereo? What's the difference?
Okay, the only difference is that it's stereo with a head in between. So this is how we hear sound every day is actually binaural. In other words, we have stereo microphones or our ears listen to sound, but there's this weird thing called a head in between our two, microphones, right? So sound hits your right ear, but then some of the sound travels around and then hits your left ear. You hear that as well. Some of the sound travels through your head and hits, and you hear it on the other side, through bone conduction. Binaural is software algorithm that can take a 5.1 mix, put it in a space, and then calculate what a head of a certain size would hear in each right and left ear. And that's how they do it. So it sounds almost exactly like you would hear it in that space.
Right.
And if you wanted to record binaural, for example, you would have to buy a binaural microphone, which is a head with two microphones in its ears. It's a real head. Not real head, it's a model head and microphones in the ears.
I gotcha.
And you just record. And to record binaural, it's as easy as that. You just get that microphone. Or Sennheiser used to have them. It's a microphone on an ear set that sits right at your ears, and they just record. And it's wonderful. If you look up Sennheiser and binaural, you listen to all these recordings in binaural, it really sounds like you're there because it takes into account the reflections, the head in between the sound, and all the way the sound waves interact around your head so that it gives you a true 3D representation of that sound in that space. It's essentially the same as
I've never heard of that.
Covering your eye up. That's, monovision and then stereo vision, right? It's the same, experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's amazing. So this is your new journey on this creating this startup. So that's why I'm saying that you are a powerhouse polymath because you've worked in so many industries, and now you are a tech startup founder, co-founder with your business partner. So that's amazing because I know that we've had previous conversations about this, and I know that being a startup, it's a lot different than doing a web series that you only need to put $1,000 in. We're talking about a multiple of money involved. Yeah. So you've had to learn how to get money.
Yeah.
As well as a whole new area in terms of just building software.
It was a learning curve.
What gave you the thought that, hey, you could do this? you and your business partner.
I don't know. Other than I think now more and more we realize that we can do anything. You can do anything as long as you involve people and you collaborate. And but also anything can be hacked. I mean, someone said the other day, "You're just like Elon Musk," and I went, "That's a stretch." But he said, "No, but the way Elon Musk hacked the rocket system, right? Because he worked everything out. He just went back to practical basics, which is, well, how much is it to build a rocket? How much do we waste every time we dump a rocket or it just gets lost in space? Can we use reusable rockets? Would that make sense? How do you make that then?" Right? You just kind of work back and, he's obviously not doing all the physics involved. I think he did study physics, but it's like the same thing. And even though we're working with a tech team that's very, very experienced, really clever, we've got a couple of geniuses there, it still takes us to come in on a day-to-day basis and go, no, but we need to solve this problem. And have you thought of this? And sometimes, often they go, no, we hadn't thought about it that way. But it's only because, and this gets back to what Steve Jobs says about, innovation, is because we've done so many different things. Somehow we're able to join the dots from so many different things. And we don't think the same way as production people who've only done production all their lives. We've done different things, like we've hacked now many different things with technology, without technology. We've hacked the writing process. We always look at different processes, and it just comes down to, look, if other people can do it, and we can learn how to do it some way, we can also hack things that are not efficient, not done well. And this is essentially some kind of innovation and hack too. It's like, well, why can't we do this? And why can't we be a tech startup? Like, we don't have to program, right? We can still run a company. Of course, we don't have to do everything, right? But that therein lies where we have to learn other things like raising money so we can pay the programmers. But there are a lot of other things that we can do that help build this business, which is we know about distribution, we know all the pitfalls, we know all the barriers to people entering this space. We also know about running events because we ran our own events, out in Botanic Gardens, and we know where we had to spend money, where we didn't, and where we'd get rid of spend next time. And so it's fun. We love it as a new challenge, but it's also out of necessity. Because if we don't fix this, then why would we make another film, right? We just make another film, waste a lot of money, and show it in cinemas for 2 weeks, which is what most people do.
So there's a couple of things I want to just quickly track back. Now, you just going back to this idea that, they're having this kind of like this idea that, hey, I can do a tech startup. I'm just wondering, this can-do attitude that you obviously have displayed throughout your life. Do you feel that you've had that from the very beginning, or do you think it's kind of just grown to where it is now just because of all the little successes that's compounded over years?
That's interesting. I wonder, but I wonder sometimes if it is, my upbringing. And I've often asked, is it because my mum always just said, yeah, you can do anything you want to as long as you set your mind to it. That's part of it. That's very ingrained. I think I read an article somewhere that there's a very big difference between Asian education, where they sort of pride effort over talent, natural talent, which is more prided in apparently in Western cultures, where they say, oh, you're either born with it or you're not, whereas in Asian cultures, and certainly in my upbringing, it was like, no, if you work hard, you can achieve it. I think I learned that very early on, but then I think some of it's just part of you, and Christian had that too, and so that makes a good partnership. And over the years, we sort of fueled each other by just going, no, let's just keep going, and I certainly think we have learned that. So little successes have fueled that and made it more kind of a core for us, that we always just keep saying to ourselves, it's a marathon. We're always running a marathon. Nothing's a sprint. This is a constant marathon. And so, but what we've learned is that when you are running a marathon and it's a marathon and you don't give up, more and more people drop out. That we haven't done that much. We've achieved certain things, certain milestones that were very important to us, but sometimes when I look at the industry, I go, well, we've leapfrogged a lot of people simply because we just kept doing it. But we also did it keeping in mind, what do we want to achieve? Not just that we want to do 1 million shows, by the end of our lives. We want to achieve international distribution. We want to achieve, the freedom of, the ability to create a project with absolute freedom and international distribution, and the ability to keep making projects. So that's what the final piece of the puzzle now. So we kind of achieved these things, and we know now, okay, we can go and make another film for $1,000. Easy. We can make another film anytime. It's just now, where would that film be played? How do we reach an audience? And how do we reach an audience and make the returns that we can keep making those films, and then hopefully fund other people in the same position?
Yes, let's talk about Cinewav, because when you first showed it to me, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was very excited about this technology. Yeah. I mean, the technology works fantastic. The experience of listening to something that you were playing on your end and having it completely sync, which is we talked briefly about the technology behind that. I think that's amazing how you solve that, because obviously that requires traditionally that would require a lot of bandwidth, but you worked out solutions around how you could actually make sure that if you had 1,000 people in the audience, that every single one of them would be getting the exact same audio signal correctly timed to the image that's displayed on the screen. So that's really exciting, and I'm excited about how do you see this roll? Like, how do you see this change the landscape? Because I know one of the core things that you were saying was basically anyone with a backpack could have a cinema in their backpack, because all you need is a projector. And these days, projectors are fairly inexpensive, and they can project on very big spaces.
Yeah.
And you need a projector, you need your software, and everyone has their phone and earphone, so you pretty much can do this anywhere with some space where you can project onto.
Yeah. So basically, we're democratizing cinema. You know, cinema used to be, well, is something that costs a lot of money to build. Like in Singapore, we've heard that it's anywhere, it's in the region of about $1 million per hall to build. And the rental is massive, because you can imagine it's a 3-story space that they have to rent in a mall. You know, and then they've got 10 halls at $10 million, and then the rent every month. So much so that most cinemas were in the red prior to COVID. Like now, they're really struggling, but most of them were in the red. And that's why we thought there has to be a different model. And the model here is the ability to have the big screen shared experience with great quality visuals and amazing audio. We didn't want to compromise on any of those. So when we took those things and we built it into a solution like Cinewav, where some guy with a laptop using our Cinewav player can plug into a 5,000 lumen projector and project beautiful images on a big white wall 10 meters wide, and have everyone just roll up with their own phones and their own headphones and get the perfect mix that we intended as filmmakers. We said, not only have we solved our problem, we've solved a lot of other people's problems, and we've solved it in a way that even cinemas didn't solve, right? We saw all the gaps in cinemas, which is the audio problem, and the fact that also there are towns, cities all around the world that don't have cinemas because it costs so much to build and then run, right? And then they're like, to be able to bring cinemas to towns, cities, and to have them set up and pull down so easily. Like one of the cinemas that we're activating soon is on an island in Singapore. We're using the back of their building, which is just a white wall, and we're projecting a 10-meter wide image with a projector that costs under $1,000, and it blew everyone away. When we showed the GM and his team there on the island, it blew them away. Like he just sat there for 20 minutes watching the image and just saying, and listening to the sound, of course. The audio quality was amazing. And he just said, this is an amazing experience, right? And like I said, when people start telling us that it's better than the cinema, we knew that we were onto something really incredible. But we hope that it's going to keep the big screen magic alive. You know, this post-COVID time, it's going to get harder and harder. Less travel means less people coming to your town, less people going to cinemas, less films can be made. You know, less films are going to be thrown around. Like, we've got a backlog of films now because no one's opening, and so the theaters are suffering. Like, it just makes no sense. But it's partly because of the economy of building cinemas, the economics around that. And that's, I think, in one little move, which is finding sync sound to picture, which is hard. But with that move, we've kind of revolutionized the whole cinema platform, which is, you know, we can now distribute, a man and a backpack, or a woman and a backpack can go and project on a wall and can run a cinema anywhere in the world. I mean, a lot of things.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Now, I know one of the awesome things that you're also building in to make it a kind of end-to-end solution is that you have partnered with a licensing company, is that right, that can help distribute films. So basically, on your platform, if someone wanted to screen a film, they could actually use your platform, find a film that you have that's on your platform, and just stream directly from there. I understand that's currently expanding. That's right. Yeah. So how many films do you have at the moment that people can access if they wanted to use your system?
Well, it'll depend country to country, because we're now starting to, you know, licensing per territory is a whole other game, and it's distribution. It's very complicated. It's very old school. The way the old system used to work is that if you wanted to go and go and put a film screening up on a wall somewhere, you would have to find the licensor for that film. And it may not be the production company. In fact, it's often not. It's some other distributor that is only distributing for public video or non-theatrical events, right? And they're sold sometimes very separately to territorial sales. So someone might have the film rights for that territory for theatrical, streaming, online, whatever, but they might not have the public video non-theatrical event screening rights. So then you might have to go back to the IP rights holder, which you often can't find or can't contact, and then ask them, well, who owns the rights for this, for this particular type of event screening? And then you have to find it. For Hollywood films, there are basically 2 or 3 companies that manage those titles. But you would go to those companies and you go, look, I want to watch, I want to show 100-Foot Journey here at this time. Okay, the license is this much. You have to pay me based on how many people you think are going to come, blah, 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 blah. And you negotiate with them one-on-one. It takes you a week or so to negotiate, and you sign a contract, and you pay. And then you go, well, okay, where do I get the file from? We don't know. They don't give you the file. Huh? So then they say, go buy a Blu-ray or play it off a legally acquired file like iTunes or Netflix. Wait, no, this file isn't available on iTunes or Netflix. Like this movie is not available. Well, we don't know. You go to eBay and find a file. And by the way, if the file is a DVD, you're not allowed to play that on this size screen because the DVD quality would be too low. Wait, so you're not helping me find the file. I pay you for the license, just for the license to show the film, but you can't get me a physical file. And then I have to buy it and rent it, I don't know, whatever. Find it somehow. Totally broken. Real hassle. So imagine putting together a whole bunch of films, film titles for a screening. So then we said, well, let's solve that too. And even in our distribution model, we had to go and make DCPs, which you generally have to pay for. We hacked that too. We did it ourselves. But yeah,
just explain DCP.
It's a digital cinema package, I believe. And it's a type of file system that cinemas require for you to load into. It's encrypted. You have to, get special keys to unlock it for a certain date to this date. And that's how cinemas work, to help protect the files. Having said that, their files are never really that well protected because the day it releases, somehow, people are managing to, I don't know, pirate it or whatever. But, it's so hard to protect that even these protection systems can't do it. But even with the systems, it's a real hassle for the filmmakers because you have to create these DCPs and send them all over the world for all the festivals that get made, which is $300 to $600 return, right?
To make a while.
Well, no, to send it. To make it
right.
Can be anywhere from $5,000, $5,000 to $10,000 for the first one, and then maybe a few $100s to $1,000 for each other drive that you make. And we had to send different drives to different festivals, obviously, because they're happening simultaneously, and also to our local cinemas, right? And if you want them all to get it straight away, you have to have different drives. So it's $1,000 here, $1,000 there. Some companies
that sounds very expensive.
Some companies are even charging $50 per key to make, just a password to unlock it. So you want me to make a key? I charge $50 for that. So I'm telling all filmmakers out there, you can hit me up if you want, but we can tell you how to do all that for free. We use open source software to do it, and we made all our own keys. All our DCPs were made by me and at home, and saved us a pile of money. And it worked perfectly. Like, you use your ProRes file. All the cinemas we went to, we watched all the films in those cinemas, and it worked perfectly. But most people still pay for them and pay, over $10,000 for the whole process. But what we decided to do is, why is this so antiquated? Everything's streaming now. So we built an encryption system, which is equivalent to all the encryption systems out there for DRM protection, to protect the assets in our library. But instead of you having to go out and find your own file, we will have the high quality digital file there in the system, encrypted and ready to use when you program it. So you can program anything from that library. That encrypted file gets downloaded to our Cinewav player on your laptop, and then when you're at the event, you just press play. That's it. The encrypted audio gets downloaded by your audience members to their phone, and when the film plays, they press play, and that's it. And afterwards, both sides get deleted automatically. So you have kind of an end-to-end system. In terms of how many film titles, we currently in Singapore, we've cleared over 118 film titles for use here in Singapore. In other countries, it's slower because we don't have partners in a lot of other countries yet. But the minute we have a partner that's interested, we'll just start clearing the rights for all the films that they want.
So just in terms of that, so if I wanted to film or screen another film that I happen to have in my library, but I wanted to public screen it, how easy is it to do that? Is it just simple as just upload it to your server?
You don't even upload it to our server. You play it off your laptop. So for films that aren't in the library, you play it locally off your laptop using our player. All you have to do is strip out the audio and upload that to the cloud so that it can be delivered to the audience members. And stripping out the audio can all be done with free software. It's just an MP3 or an AAC file. MP3 is best. We've tested it with audio files here, and they can't tell the difference. MP3 is CD quality. You know, we work out how to simply strip it out. It takes about 5 minutes, and you're done. And you never have to pass us your video file, your film file. You keep it on your laptop and you play it as an external file just off your laptop. And then the only thing we need on our end is the audio file. And that you upload in the back end of Cinewav, which is a very simple 4-step process. You create your event, decide how much you want to charge for the tickets, and then the third step is basically uploading your audio file. And the last step is just agreeing all the terms and conditions.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds very simple.
Yeah, you should try it.
No, I'm thinking. I'm since you showed it to me, I'm thinking about where I could put on an event.
Well, first of all, just try it in your backyard. Try it with your backyard with some friends. You're more than welcome to show Perfect Girl if you want.
Good idea.
Yeah, because I think a lot of it sometimes is just needing people to experience it first to get their brain thinking of, you know, once you experience it and once you kind of physically do it, you'll then start to understand, oh, where can I do this? And how can I innovate this? And how can I hack this? And what environments could it be? And then I'm sure you could show those people, you know, like if you think of a restaurant or a rooftop or a beach or anything, I'm sure that those ideas will come straight away. But I encourage you to just try it. It's pretty easy. And you're a tech guy. You can do this. You do it like in an instant. And then you can run a cinema. And we'd support you to run the cinema, because the more people we have doing this, you know, who are entrepreneurial, who understand what it is to, you know, run events and cinemas, but also understand how much we're saving them with this setup. I think, you know, the more people who can do that, the more films we'll get, and the more this will just grow, because I think it'll be a network effect. It's already starting. I mean, just the fact that we have a few partners already saying yes to it means that the film library is growing. You know, they're saying yes. We don't get seen, so how do we get seen? And then when we talk to the film bank medias of the world, who are they sort of represent half of all Hollywood films for event screenings. They're really helping us. They're working with us to get through all the barriers with the studios so that we can bring their entire library, which is tens of thousands of films. So they're saying, look, once you pass this process, we can give you the entire library. And so anyone can show any film. Because why wouldn't they?
That's
They're in
exciting.
they're in the business of allowing people to watch their movies, and what we're giving them is a, a very democratized cinema that can be popped up anywhere and can run for long periods of time anywhere. And for some towns, maybe their only cinema. But who would want to go and do that? And we're keeping the film magic alive, right? The big screen, great audio magic alive, and I think that, and the fact that we can give you or give them transparent reporting, so we can say how many people actually turned up on that night and listened and watched that film. That's what we wish to do, which didn't happen before. It's not transparent at all.
Yeah, no, that's great. You can get all the reporting analytics.
Yep.
Very exciting. I guess this is pretty much taking up all your time right now, yeah? Just like
That and having a
reaching
3-year-old
more.
son.
And
Yeah,
3 year olds.
yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Of course, that's one thing that I've neglected to say is that you've also, in this period of time, gotten married and had a kid and being a dad,
yeah.
which obviously,
Yeah, it's great being a dad, and I want to have that time and flexibility, and that it's part of the reason why Christian and I, who both have young families, want to hack the way in which we work. Like we never, thank goodness though, we never got a real office. We didn't spend money on, kind of the design of an office or anything. It was just always just what do we need now? What do we need to build this? And how do we do this? Our proof of concept was incredibly cheap, and we raised money off that. And but even till now, it's like how do we keep going and create all the things that we want to do, like events throughout Singapore. Pretty big company asked us to pitch, and we got all these quotes from a lot of other event companies, and we just said, "You're killing yourself. You're killing yourself with all these markups, which will make this event undoable for 50 people socially distanced." It's undoable. And even before this, events were undoable generally because they were so expensive with the rental of the screens, the projectors, all that kind of stuff, that it made no sense. And what we decided to do, and they're not taking on board, these event companies that we're talking to, is that we're going, guys, with Cinewav, the remarkable thing about this is it allows you to think out of the box. So instead of that heavy, massive screen that you're going to bring out for 500 people, you can have 3 small screens that 2 people can set up, and you don't have to because we don't have to face the speakers anymore. But a 200-inch screen 2 people can set up, and 2 people can set up 3 of those. That's a business innovation, but we can set it up in a triangle, and we suddenly have something that's remarkable, that's unique, that's cool. But it also means that now instead of 6 staff that you have to charge, thousands of dollars for with all this equipment, you can now go, 2 people with screens that they can carry one by one, with projectors they can carry in their backpack, not these massive high lumen projectors that, by the way, don't perform all that well because we've tested it. Once again, we get our hands dirty, we hacked it, we tested it, we tested our projector, our $1,000 projector against DCP projectors in the cinema, and we got results that blew us away. That's when we said, guys, we have to rethink this. But a lot of people don't want to rethink it. They don't believe us. They don't want to believe us because I think they just want to believe in their business model from the past, which was I have to hire a $2,000 projector with 4 people to handle it, which with scaffolding to put it up. That's what an event means to me. And that's not what we're building. We're building a cinema that can scale. For you running a cinema, that cinema can be you with a backpack, literally, and that's what we want you to do. Find a white wall, put up a movie on a wall, and have people have an amazing experience, and then to grow that next week, and you go, well, I have another wall over here, or I have a screen that I just carried. 50 people can watch the screen now. And now I have this beautiful shared experience outdoor. They can buy food, beverage. I can bring all that together, and suddenly I've got a really interesting business. But my overheads are little to nothing, and that means that I could scale this every week and eventually have a Cineplex where there was never a Cineplex before, But a Cineplex that's so cool because it's on a beach and I'm supporting all the people that are doing F&B here.
Hey, question: if you had the three cinemas, can you connect all three to the same one computer?
Yes, it's just
Or would they have?
that's really simple. That's just an HDMI splitter. So
Okay.
yeah,
See, I'm sure.
no, but it's a good question because so many people ask us they've never done that before because film
Yeah.
festivals never connected screens before, never had multiple screens. Like, how do you do that? We're like, well, we did it with a splitter. It cost me $10, right?
Awesome. Okay.
And it's just you can run an HDMI cord. In fact, you can get. I bought one. It's 100-meter HD. Is it that long? Yeah, you can have 100-meter runs of optical HDMI cords,
Wow.
and they're not that expensive. So you could run them anyway. But for three in a round, it's just you just go for a 10-meter HDMI cord and split them. So you can have the same movie. You can play three different movies. Even easier, three
Yeah.
different laptops, three projectors, and so we're finding that people aren't thinking out of the box. People aren't thinking, how can I continue a business or build a new business by innovating, like changing the way I do things. Generally when we see these event setups, the projector is way, way, way behind the audience, which means that you have to have a 20,000 lumen projector because the further away you are, the more light you have to throw,
Yeah.
which didn't make sense to me. I went, do these guys ever do physics? Because get the projector up the front and you reduce your lumens by, factors of sometimes 10. And we discovered this again one day because we got our hands dirty. And that's one thing I want to say. I'm gas bagging a lot, but that we do stuff has taught us a lot. Because we had a kind of a moment today of going, are we going to do a lot of our events ourselves, or do we just farm it out and let other people do it? Because we can just be the technology company. But I said to Christian, we said, look how much we've always learned whenever we've turned up for our own event. One of the events we did, we turned up. A school wanted to show Jimami Tofu. We were fiddling with their projector in a 300-seater hall, and the projector, which was a $20,000 projector, just wasn't throwing a big picture. It was a tiny picture on a massive screen. And we're like, why? We can't zoom on this lens. And they said, yeah, it's a fixed lens. Yeah, we can't zoom. It's horrible. And it's so weak, the projection, because it was the back of the hall.
Yeah.
So finally, after an hour of fiddling around with it, we said, oh, Christian, do you have our little Epson in your backpack? Yeah. Oh, let's bring it out. We put it up the front and projected a 15-meter wide image filling the entire stage screen, the back of the stage. And the staff at that school were just blown away. How is this possible? That lens was $2,000 and that projector was about $20,000. And then from then on, we always just brought that projector and just compared it. And it blew us away every time. We've got photos we'll put up on the website. But then we finally went in to GV, the Golden Village, and we said, can we try it here? And we were working with Kenneth Tan, who was the ex-general manager of GV, and he said, hey, I love this Cinewav idea. Let's try it in a cinema. Seeing as it's COVID now, we can't try it anywhere else. And so he hired a 200-seater cinema. We brought our little projector in and projected on the 10-meter screen. And sure enough, it was a beautiful image, and the staff couldn't tell the difference. That's when we knew this is a very, very interesting model.
So you watched a film in a cinema using your system and your own earphones.
In fact, better than that, we had a bunch of students watch it, and they couldn't tell the difference, that it wasn't the cinema projector. We also watched it all the way through, just to look at cinema quality and everything, and then we did the same thing in lecture halls. Sometimes using their projector, sometimes using our little one. And what we discovered is, this is really amazing, that when you use a little Epson that's only 3,000 lumens, but when you bring it up close to the screen, of course, that's so much brighter than a 15,000 lumen projecting from the back of the hall. Of course, because light drops off so much. So why don't you just get the projector in front of the audience and have a wide throw? And so we started working with all these different projectors and experimenting. We bought some, I bought a 7,500 lumen Barco, bought an Optoma, which is 4,000 lumens. And what we discovered was Epson's the only company that when they state lumens, they mean across all the colors. And all other lumen numbers only refer to white. So of course you can project white really brightly at a certain distance, which is never specified. But when you have to project color, it's washed out. So only the other day I found a graph. It was something that we knew. We were like, this barcode doesn't work as well. This 4,000 lumen projector Optoma doesn't work as well. We bought all these other projectors and we were racking our brains. How come? What is this lumen thing if it doesn't work? It doesn't make sense. And then I finally found one file the other day by someone who had measured all the white and color lumens of all these projectors across the board. And I found out that for a lot of brands, when they say 4,000 lumens white, they actually mean when he goes and measures the colors, it's 800 lumens of color. That's it.
800 lumens, even though they say 4,000.
Yeah. So if you're just projecting white, then you'll get a very bright image. But if you want to project any color or contrast, you get a very dark image. And that's what we discovered just by having our hands in it and not being kind of hoodwinked by events people who said, no, you need a 15,000 lumen projector for that. It's going to cost you $2,000 a day and then 2 extra workmen and the scaffolding, blah, blah, blah. We're like, that's what made us buy the Barco to start off with. But when we compared that to our Epson, we're like, our Epson is almost twice as bright. Doesn't make sense. This is a 7,000 lumen projector. Doesn't make sense. And then as we kept going and buying other projectors, we discovered, and going out there with our screens, setting them up, putting it on and going, would I pass this? Would this be the same as a cinema experience? And that's what we're trying to create. But
that's good. Do you have all this? This is a wealth of great information. Is this available on your Cinewav advice in terms of best projector to use for?
We haven't put it up on our website yet. We're actually in the process of changing over our website and we're just redesigning it. But we will.
Okay.
And anyone that wants to be a partner, anyone listening out there who wants to be a partner and says, I want to get into the exhibition business of being a cinema essentially, or being a roving cinema, whatever you like, you can hit us up. You can email me at the Cinewav website or jchan@cinewav.com, and we will go through this. We'll tell you everything that we want to know and support you, because we're going to put it up on our website because I think it's fantastic knowledge for those people who are entrepreneurial and who want to do this, who want to innovate this, and who want to create cinemas in the middle of the city, on a wall somewhere, or even in a town somewhere out in the country, or on a beach, wherever it is. We'd love to see those cinemas, and we want to make you part of the team, be our partners. Essentially, that's what you would be becoming, right? We also know how to. We also bought these screens from Alibaba, for example, these aluminium screens. We tried everything. We bought blow-up screens, several of them, and we didn't like them. They were incredibly heavy. You'd think that they're all inflatable, so they're light, but they're really, really heavy, really cumbersome to carry around and to transport. And then we discovered these aluminium fold-up screens, which came apart. And the wonderful innovation about that was multiple pieces. So each piece was incredibly light and really easy for one person to handle. And then when you finally had to pull it together, 2 people could do a 200-inch screen, which serves a 100-seater cinema, by the way.
Wow, that's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
How much were they?
The 200-incher, I think, from Alibaba was about, if I remember correctly, about $400.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, cool. If we do them at scale, if a lot of people want them, then we can get them down. But we can introduce people directly to, Alibaba. We're not taking any of that. So it's, a screen for $400 or $500. A projector you could probably get secondhand for $500, and a laptop, which everyone generally has
already.
But it's 3 things. For probably for about $1,500, you have a cinema. So it's $1,500 versus $1 million for a hall. And that's, I think, what the innovation is. It's the ability to have that and to give people an amazing experience. And I think once you try it, you'll agree. You'll see that it's so much better than cinema, because audio is all about getting it as close to your ears as possible. The minute you've got to travel a long distance, you're going to have problems, you know.
All right, I'm excited about trying this out. I'm just thinking about where I'm going to do it. You said I should just do it at home. I can do that. I've just got to find a nice blank wall. Actually, just downstairs would be fine, I think.
Well, you've got a screen behind you as well. The back of that, is it white? Probably.
Yeah, I can use that. I can use my photo drop.
Yeah, I mean,
that's true.
You know, it's part of that. It's the spirit of innovation that, you know, if we get partners on board, I'd love for them to really think outside of the box. You know, shade cloth. Like, I went and projected on shade cloth, and it worked perfectly. Do you know what else I did? I projected on fly screen material, and
fly screen.
Yeah, because I thought.
What color was a fly screen?
Sorry.
What color was a fly screen? Like black?
Gray. Yeah, black.
Gray.
Yeah, and it was remarkable because you know, there are a lot of places that are really windy, so they go, oh well, what's the hassle of wind and everything? But do you remember in theater there are scrims that you see through? It's basically material with holes in them as a scrim, right? You can project on scrims, and you can get beautiful projections on scrims that, you know, you can't see through if you don't backlight it. So essentially, fly screen is just a scrim, right? So I projected on fly screen, and I have a video too, and we'll post all this stuff to our social media when we're ready. I was amazed that I could watch a movie on fly screen, that there are enough bits between the holes to actually see perfectly well. You just have to be back far enough that the holes just mesh, you know.
Right, so you can't see the pixelation.
Yeah, but essentially you can project on anything. I mean, of course, you know, the hack in Australia would be to go to locations and say, put up a sail. You know, those sails that are basically shades, sunshades. Sometimes they're using, you know, that sort of shade material. Sometimes they have holes in them just so that wind can pass through. Sometimes they're not, and they're on an angle. But you look at that and you go, well, that's perfect. Everyone seated on the ground, you know, could be lying down and watching a movie on an angle. You could project at an angle, and you've got a shade in the daytime, and at night it can convert into a sunscreen, you know, a beautiful movie screen. And, you know, if it's white, by the way, gray works better than white, because
really,
yeah,
okay.
I didn't know this because you always project on white, but gray works better because the darks become darker, so you have high contrast.
Oh,
so you get a high.
I've actually got a gray backdrop. I could try it on that.
Yeah. So, you know, like I thought, there's shade cloth all over the place in Australia, right? People just put it up, and there are all these rigs for it, like, you know, people who can make shade cloths and create these big sails, you know, sunshades. You just need someone to put one of those in, you know, and at an angle, it doesn't really catch the wind, and it's always there. Because one of the things that I think we always think about is, how do you make it so that you run a cinema all the time? How do you create all this infrastructure of a cinema without the infrastructure? And if you had something like that, shade cloth, or someone with a big fence, and they go, yeah, I could put a big banner there. Just, you know, those advertising banners, just don't print anything on it. Some of them have holes in them, so they're weatherproof. Just stretch it out and project on it. And then you've got a cinema that you never... So the big thing you get rid of is carrying the screen around. You just rock up with a projector and a plug.
Sounds good. I mean, there's still so much that we didn't cover today. I think we skipped out a bunch of stuff, like the formative Singapore years, shall we say. We went straight to kind of like towards the end when you released, did your film, and of course what you're currently working on, Cinewav. I would like to touch back on that stuff because I know there's a lot of good stuff there as well. But I'm super excited about what's happening right now with Cinewav. Let's just got one last question for you. I know you probably don't have a car now, right? you used to have a car, I assume, when
Well,
you're in
in
Sydney.
Australia,
You never had a car?
Yeah, in Australia I did, of course.
Yeah. If you had a bumper sticker and you still had a car, what would your bumper sticker say?
Wow. I think I'd ask that question. Would you pay for it?
All right, that's a good one. Yeah, make people think more deeply about it, because I know that's a big problem in terms of people. You get so many opportunities thrown at you on a daily basis, and there's always that temptation of going yes, 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 kind of like the whole shiny object kind of syndrome. So
Yeah, so I guess
think more deeply
the full statement is, if you had to pay to do it, would you do it? I think that will get people to think twice about so many things, so many parts of their life that they constantly do. And it's not just about business, by the way. I see people all the time doing things in their life, or structuring the way they work or the way they live, doing things that they can't stand. Just think, why? Why do you do that? Some people go to work. Some people actually go to work, and I mean that's something we didn't really talk about a lot. But even when I became a GP, I was working 20 hours, I think 26 hours a week when I became a GP and went through the GP program, and
That's very little. How'd you do that? I thought you had to do like 40 or 50.
No, well, it was 26 hours a week, and then you did some study and work, right? It depended.
Right, okay.
It depended when you were doing it. But then when I left, I kept it about those hours too. I think it was about... So when I was a GP working after the program, I did 1 full day a week, and every other day was half days. And I loved it. I loved it. And it got me thinking all the time that you can just change the way you live. Like, you can change that whole paradigm of I have to work every day, And I wasn't maybe earning as much as the guy next to me, but you know what? When I look around and I go, I stopped really working full time then. When I was about 27, I never worked full time as a GP again. And I look at the lifestyle that I live. I don't have the most expensive house in the world or the most expensive car or anything, and I think, my lifestyle's not that different to theirs. They've earned a lot of money along the way, but when you earn money, it tends to slip through your fingers too, or you spend it.
You spend more.
Everyone's, like they say, everyone's 3 months away from bankruptcy. It's relative. You just earn more money, you spend more, and your lifestyle doesn't necessarily go up, on that curve. It peaks off after a little while. It plateaus, and your happiness. If you just ask yourself that question, if I had to pay to do it, would I do it? Think it'll start to make you a lot happier with anything that you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, make sure that you're spending things on matter to you and not frittering it away. Yeah, okay, that's a great bumper sticker. Now, how can people find you, Jason? I know you did mention some contact points there. Do you want to just share how people can get in contact with you? Email, I don't know, social media?
Yeah, at my new company, Cinewav.com, they can just message me through there, or jchan@cinewav.com is my email through there if they want to be a partner of Cinewav and, start a cinema somehow. Social media, I'm on Facebook. They can just find me, Jason Chan. Or I have an Instagram account that I think a lot of people interact with me. It's Jason Chan KK is my Instagram account. Yeah.
Okay, yes. And of course, that's the other thing that we didn't touch upon, your Green Power Ranger days.
Oh, yeah,
Which a lot of people...
Well, a lot of people...
We'll revisit, we'll come back and revisit those high points.
Yeah.
Look, thank you so much again, Jason, for spending so much time with me, having a chat about your very intriguing and very interesting life path.
Well, thanks, Derek. It's really fun to do this actually with someone who was a friend way back then, in the NIDA days, and kept in touch over all these years. And by the way, it's one of the best interviews I've ever done. So you're good at this. This is great.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Was...
Well, it can only get better. I look forward to our next one.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Derek. Bye.
Wow. What an episode. I tell you what, it's so easy to think that those who succeed have it easy when we only see the results of their success. and not knowing the years of struggle, dedication, and setbacks that they've had to confront and work through. And I personally found our chat really reaffirming and a reminder that achieving success takes that relentless persistence and a dead refusal to accept nothing less than what you set out to do. Grit, as Jason likes to call it. So much gold in this episode. I hope you found this chat as rewarding as it has been for me. And if you did, please consider leaving a 5-star review to make it easier for others to find and benefit from. For full show notes, links, and supporting media, including photos and videos related to all that we discussed, head over to livinglit.life. Next episode, I get to have a chat to a supremely prolific and talented artist and one of the most authentic and real people I know, Joshua Simon. He's a singer, songwriter, dancer, musician, filmmaker, and radio personality who's had the opportunity of interviewing some of the biggest stars on the planet, including Katy Perry, Britney Spears, Hugh Jackman, and that two guys, a girl and a pizza place guy, if you remember that far back. Yes, I'm talking about Mr. Deadpool himself, Mr. Ryan Reynolds. He's also had a chance to lay down vocals at the famous Abbey Road Studios to a version of the phenomenal song This Is Me from the Greatest Showman soundtrack. That's all coming up on the next episode, one that you don't want to miss because we get the full get down on Joshua's early beginnings, behind the scenes of those famous interviews, and how he's honed his craft of interviewing. I'll be having my notebook out. The infamous TEDx controversy and his current projects, including his new SG Boys podcast. I'm confident you're going to discover he's one of the sweetest guys you'll ever meet, and you'll definitely be wanting for more. So don't miss the next Lit episode. Until then, stay well. This has been a livinglit.life production. Copyright 2021. All rights reserved. To join me as a guest on the show or for sponsorship and partnership inquiries, please email hello@livinglit.life. And don't forget, stay lit. See ya.